Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Wednesday, January 31st, 2024. All council meetings will be live streamed on the city's website. And our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Charlin.
Here.
Mr. Coghill.
Here.
Ms. Gross. Mr. Lavelle.
Here.
Mr. Mosley.
Here.
Mrs. Cal Smith. Ms. Warwick.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Ms. Strasburger. Present. Chair.
Here.
7 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation, which are or may be before City Council. Profanity will not be permitted. Please state your name and neighborhood for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Naomi Mullen.
Here, I honor my husband, who is a true City of Pittsburgh servant of the public from the 1970s until 2020. 1. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. This is for you, Michael. The Pennsylvania Constitution is titled the Declaration of Rights. The entire article is concerned with establishing the principle that the people are the sovereigns, not the state, which would include municipalities, school boards, etc. They shall not harm the people or will be held accountable. The Pittsburgh Public School Board and administration are again looking to close school buildings. Yet, they have allowed Bon Air Elementary to sit empty for decades. Thousands of dollars wasted every month, yet they won't cut the taxpayer losses and move on. We want them to sell the building to the city for $1 so that the land can become a green space and the building demolished. Does our district board member not have enough clout? The previous head of business and finance would not allow our school board representative to attend the meetings about Bon Air School. He ignored her calls and emails. Is this an example of discriminating against a white female? Clearly, financial losses make no difference to those who simply waste our tax dollars, then hike taxes again. Why is there no oversight by the controller? Why is there no pressure or influence to stop this waste, fraud, and abuse? The solicitor obviously does not advise the school board and administration to stop harming the Bon Air community. First, the teachers union led the charge for residing outside the city so that their children could attend better school districts. Then it was the police who said their children were bullied in city schools. Now the firefighters have fled to areas like Cranberry and Mount Lebanon school districts. Way to go, running the good incomes out of the city, Pittsburgh Public Schools. Former Mayor Peduto was selected to be a member of a global group of mayors. It is clear that he disgraced himself with initiatives and actions that call into question his loyalties to our city, state, and county. How dare he appoint a board that said the detrimental school buildings should remain. They did not care about the property value and quality of life issues that harm Bon Air. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Gabrielle Gray.
Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year, Council, and congratulations, Kahari, on your elected seat winning. I appreciate you creating time for me to speak today. My name is Gabrielle Gray. I am a Homewood resident in District 9, and I am here today to discuss the City of Pittsburgh's comprehensive plan and or at least the development of a citywide comprehensive plan. While I am excited for the opportunity to build a city for all with each and every one of you, In order to build a city for all, we must first address the city's blight. Unfortunately, the largest amount of the city-owned blight is located and situated in Homewood. And therefore, it is critical for the comprehensive plan to be sure to include a comprehensive demolition plan that is inclusive of wet techniques as spelled out in the Allegheny County application for the Act 152 dollars. I would also like to address the public because I did publicly post up misinformation about Act 152 dollars. I was under the impression that the demolitions currently happening in Homewood were happening under Act 152 dollars. And under further investigation, I found out that I couldn't even find the city of Pittsburgh on the Act 152 list of 2023 awardees. So, I present before you a plan with a solution. I would like to have all important stakeholders come together in a meeting discussing demolition. It is very difficult in the city of Pittsburgh to determine best practices to protect residents, in particular in environmental justice neighborhoods like Homewood, with the very limited streams of data. It's very difficult to find which properties are privately funded and which ones are city funded. And therefore, it is important for this solution to include, quite possibly amending, the demolition ordinance that only speaks to city-funded demolitions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There being no further registered speakers, we will now take comments from those in the audience wishing to speak. Are there any speakers wishing to come to the podium?
How's everybody doing today? My name is Paul Harris. I'm from heaven. As it is written, and the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you this day is born in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. The day is my birthday. It's a glorious day. Thank God! Okay. Like I said, the way it's written, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Every soul belongs to the Lord. No man come to the Father except through me. So all you lawyers, it's under the law. Jewish, ceremonial, what else is it? Ceremonial, civil, and I like that smug look on your face. I want you to have that same look when you get on this throne. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Any further speakers wishing to speak? There being no further speakers, we will now move on to our standing committee's agenda. And our first committee is Finance and Law, chaired by me.
Bill 76, Resolution amending Resolution Number 857 of 2023, effective December 27, 2023, entitled Resolution Adopting and Approving the 2024 Capital Budget, the proposed 2024 Community Development Program, and the 2024 through 2029 Capital Improvement Program by increasing Charles Anderson Bridge by $22,950,000 to, that's numbers incorrect, to account for additional Federal Highway Administration funding being received at no cost to the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Do we have an incorrect
That's what I'm trying to
Number
find. that
here?
number
Okay.
now.
Would it be helpful to call someone up to the table?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up in Legistar. Just not sure if that's 22 million or if it should be. I'm not sure what that number is.
Director McDevitt, would you like to come to the table and help clarify?
Pete McDevitt, Council Budget Director. So this will add $22.95 million to the budget, totaling a $48.6 million for a Charles Anderson Bridge tip construction.
Great, thank you. When we're talking about bridges, we're talking about lots of money. So
Lots
it
of
was
money,
great to
yeah.
clarify. Sometimes it's
Thank
a change of the thousands, but in this case, it's a change of the millions.
of the millions,
I
yeah.
I appreciate the clarification.
Yep.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 48.
Bill 48, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Jeffrey Curtis and his attorney Howard F. Murphy Esquire for a single payment in 2024 in an amount not to exceed $17,500 payable over 1 year in settlement of a case filed in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas.
Motion approved.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Say, or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Moves us on to Bill 49.
Bill 49, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Judith Kulik and her attorney Andrew Sisak Esquire for a single payment in 2024 in an amount not to exceed $10,000 payable over 1 year in settlement of a case filed in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas.
Motion approved.
Second.
A discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 60.
Bill 60, resolution amending resolution number 683 of 2022 entitled Resolution Authorizing the Mayor and the City Clerk to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Dick's Sporting Goods Foundation for the purpose of receiving and spending grant funds in the amount of $90,000 to support youth sports programming in each council district, to add the director of the Department of Parks and Recreation as a signatory on grant awards.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes. So I remember this, and I'm grateful for Dick's. I love how they pitched in and trying to help our athletics and all of our neighborhoods. So this was approved 2 years ago, and is it now just coming to fruition for us? I guess that's my question. I thought like they already cut us this check a long time ago, but this is that same money that we dealt with 2 years ago, and it's just now coming, Peter?
There is a technical amendment in this bill that adds the Department of Parks and Recreation to, along with the mayor. The mayor and the city clerk was already part of the bill, but it adds the Department of Parks and Recreation to the language here.
Okay, I guess it just takes that long for something to, yeah. Come on.
I'd be happy to.
If you don't mind, yes.
Hi again, Pete McDevitt, Council Budget. So we received the money a year ago.
Okay, thank you.
This is in front of us now because we haven't spent it yet because the council, I mean, we went through the whole rigmarole with trying to give out grants last year just through the council offices. So this is just adding the Department of Recreations as a signatory so they can help administer the process because they've done this before, they've experienced, they know how to do it, and they will be able to work with council to make sure that we get these dollars out the door.
Understood. I was just curious. I thought maybe it was another 90,000.
No, we
okay,
wish, but
right.
yeah.
All right. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
That said, I had some conversation with the bill sponsor, Councilwoman Cale Smith, before this meeting began. And while there were some questions about the nature of this amendment today, and that has since been resolved, since it has not been resolved with the bill sponsor, it was her request that we hold the bill for a week so that we can fully resolve all the questions that we just resolved here at the table and
Right.
I resolved before the meeting started, but has not yet been communicated to the bill sponsor. So would someone like to offer an amendment or offer a motion to hold the bill for 1 week?
Motion to hold?
1 week?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Bill is held for 1 week. Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Here, speak of the devil.
That moves us on to invoices. Do I have a motion to approve invoices? Do we have a second?
Second.
So I will note with invoices, we have a couple of notes here. One is we need a motion to waive the rules for the DOMI invoice to PA One Call System. It is over $5,000. These are for 811 fees, which is for underground utility calls to the state. And in December, we had enough. We just happened to have enough of these calls that the total exceeded $5,000. That's one motion, and then the other, or that's one reason for the motion. The other is for Steel City Wash LLC. That would be a separate motion to remove that invoice. That needs to be paid on an existing because it's on an existing contract, and so we need to remove that from the invoice so it can be paid on the contract. So motion to waive the rules and motion to strike Steel City Wash LLC.
Second.
Can someone else make the motion?
Motion to waive the rules so that, we can vote on the bill.
And
I
a
mean, on
motion
the,
to strike Steel City Wash.
And motion to strike Steel City Wash.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the amendments, the rule is waived and the amendments are approved. Motion to approve the invoices as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, invoices are approved. That moves us on to P cards. Motion to approve P cards.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I do need a motion to waive the rules for P cards for a PLI payment to the PA Department of Labor and Industry for the quarterly permit fees that are over $5,000. This is a case where the state only accepts payment through credit card for this use.
Motion to waive the rules.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Rules are waived. All those in favor of approving the P cards?
Aye.
Sorry. Take that back. A motion to approve. Motion to approve. Sorry.
right.
No, we already did that. Apologies. Great. So P cards are approved. That moves us on to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee chaired by Councilwoman Warwick.
Bill 78, Resolution Amending Resolution 512 of 2023, which provided for an amended reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for the Charles Anderson Bridge project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $53,690,000, $59,890,000, an increase of $6,200,000 from the previously executed agreement for costs associated with the construction phase of the project, due to this phase being 100% federally funded. This resolution serves to authorize only the amended reimbursement agreement or agreements at a cost not to exceed $62,250, an increase of $56,000 from the previous amended $6,250. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreements.
Do we have a motion to approve? Or do we have a motion to approve?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Moves us on to Bill 50.
Bill 50, Resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure to apply for grant funding from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development's local share account statewide to provide funding for the Smallman Complete Street project. The grant proposal includes an ask of $999,999.13 for this stated purpose.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to Land Use and Economic Development Committee, chaired by Councilman Wilson.
Bill 51, resolution providing for the designation as a historic site under Title 11 of the Code of Ordinances, that certain site known as Frick Park, located at 2005 Beechwood Boulevard in the Swiss Elm Park, Spore Hill South, Regent Square, Point Breeze neighborhoods in the 14th Ward, City of Pittsburgh. The owner of the property supports the nomination, and there is no cost to the city.
Motion to hold for cablecast public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor of holding for a cablecast public hearing?
Aye.
Opposed? This will be held, public hearing will be held for Bill 51. Bill 53.
Bill 53, resolution further amending resolution number 840 of 2019, effective January 1, 2020, as amended, entitled, Resolution adopting and approving the 2020 capital budget and the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program, approving the 2020 through 2025 capital improvement program by reducing Pittsburgh Community Services safety by $15,000 and increasing Pittsburgh Community Services hunger by $15,000 and authorize subsequent agreements.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion here? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 54.
Bill 54, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of city planning to enter into a professional services agreement and/or contracts with HRNA advisors in Urban American City for the purpose of assisting in the development of a citywide comprehensive plan, cost not to exceed $3,255,000 over 2 years.
Can we read both Bill 54 and 55 together, please?
In Bill 55, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of city planning to enter into a professional services agreement and/or contract with Common Cost Consulting in Sasakee for the purpose of developing a citywide engagement strategy to support the citywide comprehensive plan process, cost not to exceed $2,645,000 over 2 years.
Motion to approve discussion.
Second.
With discussion?
Yes.
Councilman.
Thanks. And thank you, Chair, Madam Chair. I would like to have the Director of City Planning and whoever else you'd like to come to the table.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Kyle Trinalopoulos, I'm the city's Chief Economic Development Officer.
Karen Abrams, City Planning Director.
Sharonda Watley, Assistant Director of Strategic Planning in the division.
Thank you. And thank you for a good discussion last year. And now we're back at the table. So it was reintroduced and we've we've had some great discussions over these two bills, and specifically, it was talked about last time that when it was brought back that, my office would make an effort to have discussion to kind of flush out some of the concerns. So we did our due diligence in terms of making sure all members were contacted, and I'm really pleased with what came out of those discussions. I wanted to just highlight a couple things of why I'm supportive of the bill. One in particular is, we have to get somewhere with not only our zoning code, but before we even get there, we have to have the engagement to realize what's important. Last week, we stood outside these chambers, and we had a press conference to highlight a bill that would make a small change, but important change, and the first of many, I think, to reform our zoning code. And I think that that's important for, small neighborhoods in the city of Pittsburgh, but also on a larger scale, it points to, how much more we can dig into it and understand how we can make Pittsburgh, a place that not only welcomes the people that currently live here and keeps the people that currently live here, but also welcomes new residents into the discussion, and also anyone, everyone, including immigrants. So I appreciate the robust discussion that we've had, and so that's just that's one point that I want to make. The other one was that is a funding thing. So I understand that this is a large number. On the scale of things, I think it makes sense in terms of the money we can save in the long run. So if we want to be a city that is going to be, one that is thoughtful in the way we approach making these larger changes, whether it's transit, whether it's coordinating departments, whether it's the zoning changes, whether it's larger grants that we could obtain or receive from the federal government. We need a plan where these larger discussions, funding, what have you, would be able to drop in somewhere, and this is the plan to make it happen. So I think this is financially smart as well, in the light of that, because it could be future funding that comes out of the plan, or there will be, and then just in general neighborhood plans. I have all my neighborhoods one neighborhood plan. I think a lot of that is the goal to get to. I actually had a neighborhood plan funded, but that's kind of a interesting word, funded, because I don't think it really was funded. It was short in a lot of ways. $150,000 for one neighborhood to do neighborhood planning we would have fell short. And so this comprehensive plan would help us, reduce costs all across the board for for all those individual neighborhoods. So there is a comprehensive plan that can be done, but then just looking forward to how each neighborhood can find its own uniqueness in the plan, and then build upon that. So with that, I'll turn it over to members who have already probably raised their hand, and Madam Chair, I'll let you take it away. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilman. I have Councilwoman Warwick next.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, so we have had extensive discussion. So, but what I wanted to do, just for the public, was to ask some of the key questions. A number of members have already heard the answers, maybe, but that this will allow you all to sort of give these answers to the public for the record. So, so I'll just start out, as I think everyone, most are in agreement that we should have a comprehensive plan. It's something that most large cities, mid to large cities have. So can you explain the role of HRNA advisors in drafting the plan, first of all, and then can you give us an example of a successful citywide comp plan that they have completed? And, just what are some of the direct benefits?
Sure.
There.
Thank you so much for that question. HRNA advisors participated, managed, and led the Imagine Boston 2030 plan. And so through that effort, they led an interdisciplinary planning, strategy, and engagement team to develop action-oriented plans and strategies that build upon a deep understanding of historical context and recent demographic and economic changes. For our proposal today, HRNA advisors will lead the research and data gathering in all topic areas. They will use community and stakeholder feedback to create policy recommendations, strategies, and goals. And they will also create an implementation strategy specific to Pittsburgh, considering all of our departments and different development agencies that are also involved in this. And they will finally draft the completed comprehensive plan document. They will also be partners in some of the engagement efforts, and they will also help us to build out our dashboard to track metrics on how we are progressing with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, and then just for the case of Boston, are there sort of specific changes that Boston maybe made to their, policies or strategies, or?
Yes, so that is a really great question. So about 86% of Boston's annual budget, which is $2.78 billion, was aligned with their completed comprehensive plan. So this meant they were able to put capital investments in schools, roads, bridges, bike lanes, and libraries in a coordinated way. They were also able to leverage funding sources through the comprehensive plan to do additional capital improvement projects, as well as to start to do some climate resilience under the Boston 2030 umbrella.
Okay, thanks. So my next question is going to be around the community engagement, because I know that's a concern for a number of members. So just generally speaking, sort of in the world of planning, how much community engagement is needed for a comprehensive plan to be successful?
So since this is our first comprehensive plan, integrated comprehensive plan, we need a lot of engagement. The standard for a lot of planning activities is around 6%. We're aiming for 10% because we know that there are some hard-to-reach communities. Councilman Wilson mentioned immigrants, for example, hard-to-reach communities, non-English speakers, Black and Brown communities, people with disabilities. So in an effort to really get to people who are not ordinarily participating in our planning processes, we wanted to look at 10% of the population, which would be a really great standard for us to hold for our first comprehensive plan.
Okay, so that would be about 30,000.
30,000 residents.
Yeah. So then with that in mind, can you sort of explain the role of Common Cause consultants in this engagement? And then also, you know, why, because we do have planners and we have neighborhood services teams, you know, why this work can't be done by our folks in-house?
Right. I'll have Shonda answer that last question, since she spoke at length with our neighborhood services manager, Rebecca Rinaldo. Would you repeat the second question that you mentioned? Because that's actually an important question that Sharon is going to answer. But
just the first one would be like the role of Common Cause, and then what, you know,
yes.
why we're using Common Cause instead of just using our own people.
Right. So Common Cause has a history of doing a lot of engagement in communities, specifically in the Pittsburgh region. And so they do focus groups, they do surveys, they do outreach. I was at an event that Allegheny Conference put on, and they facilitated that event with a number of local stakeholders. So they are actually experienced in these processes. They have a really great grasp on our hard-to-reach communities as well. They've done a lot of work with our Casa San Jose, I believe, with our Spanish-speaking populations, both residents and immigrant and refugee communities. So they have a breadth of experience, and they have consultants who will also have experience reaching out to young people, for example. This plan is really, for the people, for young people, not for necessarily us at the table, but looking at the future. So young people are very important and integral to our planning processes.
Okay.
And as it relates to neighborhood services, I did have a very candid conversation with Rebecca Rinaldo, and she outlined all of the things that they do throughout the year, including the City in the Streets, the budget engagements, the volume of the 311 calls that they receive, as well as attending any number of 80 to 100 community meetings. And so as she understood the depth and scale of the engagement that we are trying to achieve, she was very clear in saying that if they had to do the engagement, they would have to stop all of their current activities. And so that included, again, those City in the Streets, the budget engagements, the 311s, and the attending the meetings and any subsequent sort of spin-off inquiries or requests that might have come from the community through those engagement.
And then Manager Rinaldo was involved in not only the development of the scope for the RFP, but within the interviews of the consultants who responded to the RFP as well.
Okay. And then for the city planning team?
Another great question. So the city planning staff will be deeply involved in the coordination as well as facilitation of the comp plan, but we also have to maintain or balance our current workloads. And so, again, those include supporting our boards and commissions, administering the RCO program, and any number of project proposals, RFPs, small zoning changes, anything that typically comes up under our purview throughout the year.
And then, so my third question will be around costs, because the last time we were at the table, Councilwoman Gross had a long list of benchmark cities and also larger cities that paid significantly less for their comp plans than we're proposing to pay here. So can you address that and then explain the difference?
Sure.
With our case.
Absolutely. So we were able to go back and kind of listen to the cities that were listed at our previous hearings. And so we did do some research in terms of what those cities actually produced. A handful of them did comprehensive plan updates. And so this means that they had already had a comprehensive plan effort. And so this was their 20-year or so update to that particular comprehensive plan. Other cities actually did a strategic framework with some elements of a comprehensive plan. And so, again, it's not exactly an apples to apples sort of comparison. And then also it's really important to note that no two cities are exactly alike. So comprehensive plans will be unique to each city, and each effort will be unique to each demographic and population. And so, again, it's not necessarily an apples-to-apples approach, but we did take the time to take a look at what they actually did do. And so, even in terms of the cost, so an example that we talked about quite a bit is the city of Chicago. So even though they did their plan in-house, they still had a budget of over $3.6 million to actually complete that. And so, and then also, just kind of taking a look at those cities, those different cities' budgets for the year, their planning department's budgets ballooned either during the comprehensive plan years or in the year or so leading up to that comprehensive plan. And so it's difficult to know exactly how they spent their money, but there was some increase of funding so that could be done even though it was in-house. And then also, I want to share that it being done in-house does not necessarily mean that it was free. And so there presumably is some operational cost or printing supplies or any number of things that could also be included in what was done for those plans in-house.
Okay, all right. Okay, my next question is just more general about the utility of a comprehensive plan. So how will having this comp plan help our city and county departments and various authorities just sort of do their jobs better? And are there any issues facing the city that we would have an easier time addressing if we had a comp plan already? And then once the plan is complete, this is also one big question, once the plan is complete, how can we ensure that all these various agencies and actually also private developers, use the plan to inform their decision making?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we have been, since the beginning of this process to get us to this point, have been speaking with all of the departments at the city as well as the city agencies, and even going as far as to talking to some county agencies. And so everybody's really excited about the prospect of participating in this plan because it requires the needs of the departments, agencies, both county and citywide, so that we can understand what their needs are and understand how to coordinate all of their needs with the city needs and residents' needs. So as important as it is to talk to residents, it's equally as important to talk to the departments. And they're definitely looking forward to it. So for example, facilities planning with DPW is a big deal for us, and understanding what the outlook is for the next few years around where they need to plan salt facilities, or any number of facilities that we do own, firehouses, police stations. It's important for them to be a part of this process. IMP, with regard to digital equity, for example. They have a digital equity manager or coordinator in IMP. So working with IMP to understand how we bring more equity into African American and Latino neighborhoods around just basically getting Wi-Fi and broadband. DOMI is a partner of ours now, but they have a plan that we want to incorporate into this planning process for the next 50 years of transportation infrastructure. DHS spoke with their director about housing. While we have housing challenges here locally, they are aware of them and they want to be able to participate in those processes. So just a few examples of departments and agencies. The URA is another big partner of ours who we've spoken with. And right now we're in the middle of our strategic planning process. I had a meeting a couple of days ago that included the Housing Authority and the URA, and they were excited about the fact that they would participate in our planning processes, and they were even invited in and participated in our RFP process as well. So there is a lot of excitement around the possibility of becoming part of the plan. And again, this is a plan for the entire city, and not just the planning department's plan, but the city's plan. So they're equal partners in this process.
Okay. So what you mentioned kind of brings me to the next question, and that is that, that we have a number of plans, departmental plans, neighborhood plans, that have been completed. Some are maybe still in the works. Some have never been implemented, So how will these plans be incorporated into the comp plan? And then also how do we ensure that this new comp plan that will continue to be used and realized over the coming years and into future administrations, so it doesn't just become yet another of many plans
right. That's a big
that we've
question.
paid for and
It's on the shelf. That's a big question, and I would hope that my colleagues here would help answer them with me. So I will just say that when the department was preparing for the RFP, we asked the staff to just throw us the plans that have already been done, or things that have been actually done by either the city, an agency, or even neighborhoods, community groups. We ended up with 60 for the attachment to the RFP. We cut that down to 30, but it gave the consultants an idea that there are a number of plans out there that are in various stages of implementation, or to your point, Councilwoman, not even been implemented at all. So one of the first tasks is to go through all of those plans, understand what's been done, what's still relevant to be done, and what hasn't been done. And that would be the basis of some data for us to continue on with our work. And I'll let others chime in on that as well.
Yeah, I would go, maybe flip the question a bit and go back to something Councilmember Wilson, referenced Councilmember Warwick, in that, we have all of these individual plans, related to neighborhood, but there isn't that common language, right, or foundational document that helps to sort of stitch them together and ensure in a structured way how they relate to one another. And I think that is the opportunity with the comprehensive plan that will actually then better position us for, not only to use the work that's been done to inform what ultimately results in the comprehensive plan, but then to better position us for implementation of all of those and the comp plan itself.
And so one of the things that we have tasked the consultant teams with doing is to help us to figure out a strategy for implementation. So not only guidelines and aspirations, but what the actual strategy is for multi-agency, multi-departmental implementation of these plans. And then also we've tasked them with helping us to figure out ways to make sure that the comp plan is a living, breathing document, which means that we will have the opportunity to go back and revisit and recalibrate as national, local, global conditions change and different things like that. And so we'll have that opportunity to do so. And so the consultant teams know that is part of this proposal, and so they are prepared to help us with that.
Okay, thanks. And then another issue that was raised was sort of that having a comp plan can potentially open up additional funding sources, right, through grants. So if you could clarify that a bit. So what lines of funding, could be open to the city, and also are there grants that we have applied for that we perhaps either haven't submitted the best application or haven't gotten it or whatever, due to our lack of a plan?
So we could pursue, because it's a coordinated effort and it's a comprehensive plan that looks at the future of the city, we actually have a better shot at a lot of grant opportunities. And we can actually search for those grant opportunities based upon the comprehensive plan guiding principles, policy recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. For example, the HUD has been putting out grants to help cities with housing needs, because obviously there's a housing crisis nationally and we're a part of that housing crisis here locally. And so there have been grants, for example, around zoning, around changing policies, regulations to make it easier to create and build and even, rehabilitate affordable housing. So that's just one example that we can see. But I think when it comes to pulling together a great grant application, having a comprehensive plan is a great way to do it. And then actually having partners who've been a part of the planning process, who can be a part of the grant application work, is also important. Some of our challenges with our grants now is that we've defined people to work on the grants. But if we get a multitude of departments throughout the city as well as the county working on our grant applications, we have much more successful grant applications and results from those applications.
Okay, and then I do have one last question, which is an additional, but I think is, because this is a lot of money, and just in terms of what the contractors will be doing, is there an option to build into the contract sort of periodic check-ins so that we can, understand what's been done to make sure, so let's say 3 months in, okay, well, how many people have you reached, right? Like how many, can we see this being put into action? And then if it's not happening or it feels stalled or whatever, then we could address it.
Right, we have built into the requests in the RFP to have regularly scheduled meetings with leadership, whether it's the mayor's office, the steering committee, as well as city council. That can obviously be put into practice, definitely. And they would probably be happy to talk to you about it as well.
Yeah, I would add, Councilmember Warwick, some of the way that it's structured, and I would say to the credit of our city planning department in having the technical services and the engagement being separate contracts, is to put them on equal footing, right? So that we're not sort of overweighting one over the other. But what that'll necessitate is sort of an iterative process by which we're going back to community and how that sort of, to your question on update, right? So those will be developed, right, as part of the work product. And then it's a question then of how we distribute that and, have a conversation, not just with community, and all of you as well. So I think that's something that, is easy to work in to the way that the contracts will be structured.
Okay. All right. Well, so I'm sure that other members have a number of follow-up questions to what was, and then also their own questions. So I will leave it at that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Carol Smith.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for your work. I know that there seems to be a lot of tension, and there's a lot of tension around this, and just a lot of tension in general around the city. But I do appreciate the work that you do, and I do understand the need for the comprehensive plan. What I don't understand and don't appreciate is, so just to give you a little background, I used to work for Pittsburgh Public Schools, and one of the things I used to hate watching was people coming up with plans that sat on a shelf and nothing ever happened with them. And then they'd hire groups to go work with the community to say we're doing great community engagement, but oftentimes those groups were manipulating what the response was. They'd get your agenda to come back instead of just saying this is what you want to have happen. And so for me, I'm jaded a little bit when it comes to this whole process of community engagement pieces, because I've watched a lot of people, particularly in Pittsburgh Public Schools in the African American community, literally they had a group that came in, did presentations to the community and said press A if you want this, B if you want that, C if you want this. Basically getting the response that they wanted. And they went from having conversations to really hearing from people and what people really wanted to getting the answers that they wanted. And so I said, you used to have open conversations. The group was formed in such a great way. It was a good way to get people to say what they really wanted to have happen in their Pittsburgh Public Schools. And towards the end, I said, so you went from having conversations to saying this is what you want. I said, essentially, it was, smaller class sizes, qualified teachers. So basically, they'd report back that people wanted their schools closed. So that's not what the people wanted at all, but that wasn't an option on the board. So what I've noticed was, I said to them, I feel like sometimes you tell them to press a button. It's A, if you want your right arm cut off, B, if you want your left arm cut off, and C, if you want your baby toe. So everybody picks their baby toe. But in there was nothing to say, what is it that you really want? And to give an answer that that wasn't guided. And so when I talk about community, I want it to be real community engagement.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing, and I think it happens a lot. And you just mentioned you really want to come into neighborhoods that are not typically part of plans. So then it reports back that the black community wants this, the immigrant community wants this, women want that. And the reality is, nobody even said any of the things you're saying, because you never really gave them a real conversation. So for me, I don't like seeing people manipulated and thinking that we're doing what's best for them, when the reality is we're doing what we want to do and what's best for us. So I'm not going to vote for a piece, for the engagement piece. I understand the comprehensive plan. I'll be supportive of that. But I'm not, until we get this engagement piece right, because I love LaTrenda. She did a great job. She worked here with Bill Peduto. She did great when she was here. That's how I know her. And so I think that she did a great job. But I don't know, what she's being asked to do. And so I think that would also be helpful, to know what questions are you giving them and what directions are you giving them. I think that might be helpful before next week. So I'll abstain from that piece today. I'll vote no on that piece today. But and I'll abstain from the plan, I think, today. Or vote yes. I can't decide what yet. But and if you give me if you give me some real answers of what you expect her to do, and what she's being charged with, then maybe I'll vote in favor next week. But and I know it's going to pass today, but I'm always going to. I don't care. I came from the community. I was not a politician. I didn't come to run for office. I ran at the age of 51. And I did it because I wanted to stand by the community. And the day I leave here, I'm going to say I stood by the community the entire time I was here. No matter who it helped, no matter who it hurt, no matter what happened, I'm going to stand by what the residents elected me to do. Okay. So with that said, I'm just going to say I hope that we're not trying to manipulate the public to get an answer that we could have just simply said, and not cost the taxpayers a dime, and simply said, this is what our plan is, this is what we'd like to do, and get some feedback on that. And any one of us could have meetings in our community. All of our staff do. The mayor has staff that does it. You have staff that goes into meetings. Thomas is amazing. I know he's no longer in all of my district, but he has to be doing something. He's amazing. Loves dancing with Mrs. Bailey at community picnics. He's great. But I want somebody to have real conversations with people. I don't like seeing people manipulated. That's all. Thank you.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
Briefly. Thomas is amazing, so I would agree with that.
And you all are too. So I don't want to say this is not about you. This is about me.
I appreciate everything that you said, and I think this only works if we have an honest dialogue, which is why, to my earlier comment on the how the planning team decided to put this forward and putting engagement on equal footing with the technical services is for all the reasons that you just said, right? Is so that we are going out and having honest dialogue. So there are instances where there may be stuff in the data that tell us, okay, this is the sandbox, but we need to be honest with people about then why that's the sandbox, and then we'll have a conversation around that. It's not that.
Oh, I'm going to come to every meeting I can. Okay.
Yeah, and you all
and I'm
should,
going to interrupt
right?
Every time.
But I think you're absolutely right. But we need to come to the conversations with the utmost level of candor and honesty. Rather than limiting sort of the conversation, because we aren't going to end up in the end with something that's an honest expression of where the city is, and more importantly, where our residents want to go.
So I'll say this: I sat on a board with Director Abrams, and she was very candid and very honest on that board. I want her to carry that same tenacity forward in this position. That's all.
Any further discussion? Councilman Charlin.
Thank you. And so I would like to keep Chief Gintalopoulos' point here of an honest dialogue.
I love that you said his name right, okay?
You know, I was a little
honest.
worried for a second, but I figured I could nail it. So
I'm impressed.
but and you know, I want to keep that honest dialogue. I'll be honest with you. I've got major reservations about this. Ultimately, I will support this, but I want to talk about what my issues are. So I ran into the mayor yesterday, actually at lunch, and he was talking about, you know, if you do the same things, you're going to get the same results. And what, you know, kind of just briefly, and again, this is the only interaction I've had with the administration about this vote. But I'm not sure that this is not just more of the same. And having been burnt by the Oakland plan in the past, and an Oakland plan that, you know, had all these things that we're describing of getting interdepartmental and interagency buy-in from the get-go, which the Oakland plan did, and it's still largely unimplementable. It's upset all but a very small contingency of residents in Oakland in a variety of different ways for different reasons. They're all, you know, no one's upset about the same thing. They're all upset about different things. But watching that process and having us go through that process, I'm not sure that we're not doing the same thing here. And I haven't had an answer from you, and I really do appreciate the department meeting with me yesterday, and really appreciate Councilman Wilson's leadership on this to make sure those meetings were happening, and at least I was getting some discussion from the administration about why this was an important vote. But I don't have any comfort that this isn't just doing the same thing. And I worry that we're going to end up in a similar situation where much of this plan is unimplementable. That said, we desperately need zoning reform. And our zoning code is outdated, continues to be outdated. We all know it's outdated, and yet it still is there. It's racist, and it prohibits growth in our city. And for that reason, I can support this. But I think we need to do better. And I think this plan is still far too expensive. I don't have a justification that meets my needs for why it is so expensive. But I am supportive, and I will vote for this today. I've wrestled with this a lot. You gave me assurances yesterday that after 2 years of this plan that we'd be able to get neighborhood plans in every neighborhood in the city within 5 years. Southside desperately needs a neighborhood plan because we need to go after some of those bigger NPP grants and larger grants that are required to have a neighborhood plan. We've been asking for it for 6 years. We continue to be on the back burner of the Department of City Planning. The Hilltop desperately needs a community engagement, and they need a neighborhood plan. I'm skeptical that this will happen because we've been promised that things are going to happen in the Hilltop, and they don't. So I still want to, I want to give you another try, but I'm skeptical, and you'll have my support today, but we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome. So, first, Director, I want to tell you, I found you nothing but engaging, confident when I met you, and I have the utmost confidence in you. And to piggyback on Thomas, one of the best meetings I was ever at was in Beachview, I will tell you. Well run, broke down into groups. Everybody was productive, and we actually came out with a lot of results. So I think you're doing a fantastic job. I really do. I also have my reservations about the plan, okay? And so I have a few questions, but I'm not going to belabor things. So I'm sorry I didn't get together with you. I was kind of afraid you might talk me into it, to be honest with you. So But that being said, time restraints, things like that. But I do appreciate the time that you took to try to inform all council members. It's very important. But rest assured, I read everything you gave us, every text, everything from the proposal, from what you think about it, from how you're going to put the RFPs out. I can go on and on, right? What cities benefited, why they benefited. I poured over it, okay? So that's why I didn't have time to meet with you, honestly. But I thought it was better for me to dig into the text, right? So just a couple questions. Through all that, right, and I'm seeing about how other cities have benefited, right? My reservations are the same as other members in some ways as to, I feel like most plans that I've been a part of in the past, which have been many, are sitting on a shelf collecting dust, truly. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think the number one reason is administrations change, right? Goals change. Economy changes. Homeless problem we have right now, the unhoused problem, right? I mean, who would have thought that we were going to be facing this 5 years ago? I wouldn't have, I would tell you. So things change all the way. We can never anticipate what the future brings. And Shawanda, to what you said, we will, engage in different times as to, what we can change about it, I guess. Is that right? With changing with the times, right? Okay. So what I didn't see, and one of the big reasons why I feel supportive of a comprehensive plan, a master comprehensive plan, is because when you say, or when people say, oh, it'll help us attract federal funding, it'll help us attract state funding, it'll help us, our grant writers, I guess, right? But what I didn't see was examples from, let's use Boston 2030, for example. So do we have data that since they've completed their comprehensive plan, how much their, whether it be philanthropy, whether it be state and federal grants, how has that increased their funding?
I don't have the data off the top of my head. That's certainly something we can talk to the team at HRNA about. Councilman,
is HRNA
prior to
here?
next Tuesday.
Is HRNA here?
No,
they're not here.
Prior to next Tuesday to get you the information on that specifically. But to respond to your question, and Councilmember Warwick asked, a similar one before, Director Abrams spoke to it. What I can tell you in debriefs that I've had with the city, in my time with the city for grants that we haven't gotten with federal government agencies and others, is certain instances. The one that comes to mind probably most prominently was when we pursued the Promise Zone designation. I guess it would be now probably about 8 years ago. And what we were told was it in part, and I've heard this on some others, is what the feedback that we got was the awards that we did make, it was clear to us, from documents like a comprehensive plan, that this is something that the city, has been working on or signaled, through previous work, like a comprehensive plan. Whereas for us, their concern was that we were just sort of crafting, something in the moment for a grant, which in certain instances is true, in other instances is not. And, we're able to point to those things, but without having some of that foundational, work being done, then, that is feedback that we've received is part of the reasons why we haven't received, grants previously. And like I said, the Promise Zone is the one that probably comes to mind first.
Okay, so if I could just ask, if I could get some data from the company doing our master plan as to how other cities have benefited financially. I mean, I would think it'd be pretty simple. Like, if they raised $100 million last year, then since the comp plan, and now they're doubling that. It's just simple math there, I think. So I was surprised not to see that in your advantages. That to me is number one reason why I feel it's necessary to have a comp plan.
Well, I think in the Boston example that Sharonda gave, I believe after the comprehensive plan was completed, they were able to secure like $1.5 billion in federal and state funding with the help of state and federal partnerships. So that's just one outcome. I mean, it's just one. So I know you want more than just Boston.
Well, when you say they secured $1.5 billion, what did they do before the comp plan? I'm just comparing. I just want to see before and after. what it meant for other cities.
Okay.
You know? So,
Okay.
I mean, we could point to any plan, say it contributed to securing funding or grant money or whatever it might be. So,
Absolutely.
So I would just like to see some raw numbers on that, if there are any. You know, I'm sure the people doing our plan, they should know that number, I would think. So I'm disappointed they're not here today. I thought they're not local, are they? Yeah, okay. All right, I understand. I guess they're Zoom, but that's okay. Let me ask you this. Who will be running the business? And when I say the business, I've been in business for 30 years, okay? When you're talking about subcontractors, you're talking about neighborhood meetings, you're talking about payroll to a lot of people, you're talking about just a plethora of things over 2 years. Who's the chief operating officer?
Assistant Director Wiley. Yeah.
Okay, right. So payroll. Who's going to do payroll?
For the community groups.
The groups, the organizations, you know.
It's going to go through Common Cause.
Oh, Common Cause is going to do that end of it. So it's not through you. Common Cause is going to do the payroll, figure out who gets paid. Who's going to do the hiring? Let me ask you that. Of the groups and the individuals that we're going to pay.
Right, we contracted with HRNA to
They're gonna do all
provide
that.
those services, exactly.
They're
They
gonna
will
do
be
all that.
invoiced based upon work that they've done through the city of Pittsburgh, but these are their contractors, and both Common Cause and HRNA will be responsible for paying all their subs.
But who's picking them?
They've
Who's
already been, the subs have been selected and they're part
I
of the
did see a
team.
list of that, didn't I? A couple,
Yes,
about a month ago. Yeah.
exactly.
How many subs from District 4, do you know?
Well, the subs are really part of the work that's being done citywide.
Right.
There will be, and they haven't started any work yet because they have to have a
course not. They don't
contract.
have the money yet, right?
But they will produce an engagement plan to us as one of their first requirements of the RFP and the contract.
So you picked the subs, but you didn't pick the individuals to be on the panel.
Well, no, because we have to actually do some outreach and understand who has what capacity to do some of the work that's needed to be done in community as far as engagement and approach.
Okay. The subs, can we get a list of that again? I know we presented at the table at one point. Do you have it?
The subs are One Hood Media, Alyssa Lyon, who does the environmental justice work, and Brown Mamas, who represents about, I think, 1,200 Black and brown mothers throughout the city of Pittsburgh.
So it's just 3 subs?
3 subs.
Oh.
But they have, but Common Cause itself has a number of contractors that they work with individually with their own work. We just needed some subs to get to those hard to reach communities.
Right. Okay, my major concern is, how are you going to assure that if we put a $6 million plan, it's going to take 2 years, how do we reassure that 10 years from now, if we have a different mayor, different council, how are we sure that we're going to follow it? I mean, we're going to put all this money into this plan, and you're going to come up with, and let me just ask you this, what is for the public listening, right? Just give me a short version of what you're trying to achieve for the city, your direction, correct?
Direction, coordination, understanding how to better budget, how to be more sustainable with our resources. We have some crises that we're trying to address. Obviously the housing crisis here, the climate crisis that is upon us and is going to continue, as well as economic and racial equality. That's a major crisis that we have as well. So we have a lot of things in front of us now that we're not coordinated in figuring out how to accomplish. And also we really want to make sure that we're including the hopes and aspirations of all of our residents, especially young people, around the future of the city and how they can be a part of it and what their role and what they want out of it. We have immigrant populations who, we want to engage. So we really look at this as a plan that we are all responsible for. The problem in the past it's been responsibility of the planning department to do things. But I think if we all take ownership of this, and I think everybody on this table, in the mayor's office, taking ownership of it, and the residents, especially if they're engaged, will have a sense of ownership of it as well. We'll ensure that, we continue to keep this plan going and provide updates when necessary, look at how we can budget more efficiently, making sure that we are budgeting with the comp plan in mind will be very important as well.
Okay. again, my biggest concern is administration's change, council's change, new direction, new mayor comes in, wants a whole new direction. This is on the shelf, I feel. I really do. It will help. I hope they pay attention to it because we spend a lot of money for it. I hope they don't decide to put their own plan out, I can tell you, because and scrap this plan. But I'm not confident that, and I've seen it 1,000 times, that plans get put on the shelf, new administrations, new people come in, and they're forgotten about. Okay, new vision, new goals for the new administration. So, do you want to say something?
I would just add to, responding to the sentiment that you're expressing, Councilman, and adding to what Director Abrams said, the way I think that the team has laid out sort of the guiding principles for the plan too is, being around a just transition. So in part, that's going to acknowledge some of, the stuff in our past that Councilmember Charlin spoke to in terms of the history and heritage and, negative impacts of our land use policies, historically speaking. And then how are we rethinking, not just that, but everything that Director Amos talked about going forward in a way that's responsive to the climate crisis and what that means for the future of the city. We see that manifest itself in different ways, differently throughout all of your districts, whether it's landslides, whether it's flooding, et cetera. I don't think that's going to change, right, in the way in which we need to think about it. And then as we're thinking about that, as we're thinking about the changing of that's happening within the economy and doing so in a way that is responsive and addressing all of the needs of each of our communities and our most impacted communities in particular, I think some of that kind of those are through lines, irrespective of anyone's individual viewpoint, right, or perspective. Those are through lines, and there'll be some guiding, principles that'll really be informative to the way the work and the way in which we approach the city going forward.
Okay. So, again, Director, I have the utmost confidence in you. You've been nothing but engaging with me. You've been wanting to get together. We get together, and, I love your staff. I'm telling you, I just met with Nancy yesterday, new planner. Fantastic, out of Chicago, and she was very engaging, and it was, again, just a telltale sign of your department. And again, here's my problem with this, okay, is not the plan itself. The expense of it is a problem for me, I will tell you. I'm like $6 million, but anyway, I can get past that. My real problem is being financially prudent, okay, and I'm just going to point to a couple things that we've done since the new year, okay. We took out a bond with the URA for $62.5 million, of which we're going to get $31 million gross, and we're going to pay $30 million in interest. We just took out a capital bond, which I agreed with a capital bond. This is what bonds are for, as far as I'm concerned. I disagreed very much with the URA bond, I will tell you. It just put us in debt, put us behind the 8 ball, I feel, and that's why I'm stressing this to you. It's not the plan itself. We had a capital bond for $92 million. We're paying $34 million in interest. So just since the beginning of the year, we took out $154.5 million in loans, and we're going to be paying $65 million in interest on that, okay? Again, the second bond, the capital budget bond, I'm good with, okay? But here's what really worries me. As you know, we've got people appealing their reassessments downtown, right? We already know that we paid back $1.8 million from 2023. So what we do know is they have until the end of March, all the other parcels. And Councilwoman Gross knows how many and all that stuff, so I'm not going to get into those numbers. But how many potentially can appeal their reassessment, right? If we didn't just go $154 million in debt, and if this wasn't looming over us, we already lost 1.8. God forbid if they all file and the reassessments, they have until the end of March. I want to suggest, and I want to plead to this council to wait until the end of March before we approve this plan to see what the forecast brings us. Because as of now, we don't know. And that's all capital budget, or that's all operating budget money. The 1.8 we returned, and whatever comes our way. So I think it's financially irresponsible for us to pass this next week without knowing what debts we're going to be looking at, unforeseen debts that we're going to be looking at, and that's in the reassessments. So again, nothing to do with you. You're fantastic. I believe you'll put out the most fantastic. I hope you do for this kind of money. I really do. I hope it's the best, most fantastic plan ever. We're not going to see it for 2 years, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm just not okay with the timing of it more than anything. I'm not okay with the cost either, but the timing right now, until we see what we're going to be looking at with our properties in the first and second ward downtown, we should just put the brakes on it, right? Yeah. 2 years until March. We'll take it back up in April, as far as I'm concerned. And then we'll have a better idea as to what we're looking at. It's impossible for any of us to know what that looks like right now. Although we are getting a steady list as to who does appeal. And I think as of yesterday it was 20 or so. I don't know. So that's my reason I can't support it, okay? It's not the plan itself. It's not that I don't think it's a good tool to raise money for grants, for state grants, federal grants, for philanthropists that want to contribute. Maybe having a good, big, beautiful plan helps their confidence to give us money. I understand that. That's the part I like about it. Yet I didn't see any examples from other cities on that as far as what it meant from a cash flow, So I'd like to see that before next week, before we vote on it. And if you can convince me that Boston has raised 300% more money since finalizing their plan, I'll rethink it. I will tell you. All right. So
we will certainly get you that information. I don't know that it's 300%, but we'll certainly get you that information.
1.5 billion. Yeah, I mean, come on, it's got to be something, right? So, and the other thing is, we have so many costs. We have a fleet. I was just with Public Works, a fleet that is depleted in every aspect. Public safety, public works, all operating money, right, that we need to use this cash for. I will not be voting to raise taxes for this city, especially if we continue to go down this road, racking up our debt. I will not be voting to raise taxes for the city. Unfortunately, that's where we're headed, I think, before 2028. So, okay, I'll listen to the rest and, maybe have a follow-up. But again, thank you. I appreciate your efforts to try to get together. I appreciate you informing all others. I did read every word of it. I know every part of it, but I just can't come to support it at this point. So thank you, Director.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you to the other council members and their questions. I think we all kind of acknowledge that everybody likes everybody here at the table. This is not, we can't vote for $6 million just because we like you, right? So let's just acknowledge that. So I'm going to follow up on the questions that we had back in December. And I think that, again, I read the memos as well. Thank you for sending the memos from the planning department. Thank you to my colleagues for also sharing with me their questions and answers. And I see that we have for the public record, the entire RFP is attached to this legislation and in Legistar. So if you're at home and you find this bill, which the number is not right in front of me, it's on today's agenda, you can actually read the RFP. And I find that helpful as well. I want to follow up on one small issue that I think is important. Several members asked about how will we apply, what will this comprehensive plan do to help us with external bodies of government, specifically authorities or other levels of government like the county. And the response in a briefing that we had last year when I specifically asked that question was, well, it doesn't apply to them. Today at the table, you said, well, they're very excited. So both things may be true, right? They may be very excited. You may have reached out to them, which I think was prudent. And they may have told you that, they would like to participate. They'll fill out a questionnaire themselves, that kind of thing. But our comprehensive plan does not apply to, for example, even a city authority, right? That was the question I asked in the briefing. The answer was no. Does this plan apply or have any authority or enforce anything over PWSA? Does PWSA have to comply? When I asked that question last year, the answer was no. Is that true? Or do you have a different answer today?
I think, Councilwoman, the form in which it applies is something we're going to have to figure out and work through, just to be completely honest with you.
So no, the answer is not no anymore?
I think it's to be determined, to be honest, in terms of the form of which, like, you know, the city adopts it, right? And then how each of the respective boards
Chooses
adopt or integrate it. We need to
optional.
work through those specifics.
But it is
Yeah.
optional.
I don't know that I would say today that it's optional. I think we have to determine that.
Okay, so my understanding since the briefing, where the answer was very squarely, just literally not even expounded upon. When I asked the question, does this apply to the SEA,
Right.
the URA, PWSA, Parking Authority? I feel like I'm missing maybe a city authority.
Housing
Authority. The answer was no.
I think by virtue of just the city adopting it doesn't mean that it's automatically adopted,
Got it.
you know, by the respective authorities. So we have to work through the mechanics.
We would ask them
the fact that the
to
city's
cooperate.
never had one before, you know, we're entering uncharted territory. So I think that is something that we'll have to, you know, ultimately
It feels like it's
determine
just a
and pin
matter
down.
of Pennsylvania law, does it not?
I don't know the specifics of Pennsylvania law to be able to answer that for you.
It does seem like a legal question that would have precedent. And so we just don't know.
Yeah.
We're not sure.
I would say I'm not sure. Yeah. But I think of the way in which we, so as an example for the URA, evaluate sites, having the comprehensive plan in place becomes incredibly helpful and informative so that it is something we can refer back to and use to guide the sites in which in the way in which we work with community in order to find development partners for those without having to go through and evaluate, you know, things that may come through unsolicited, you know, for particular sites that may not make sense for development, though a developer may think it does.
Well, that leads me into my next question, right? I mean, so, again, I'm still going to operate under I asked this question intentionally. I think it was last summer when we had the briefing. Maybe it was early fall, like September. And that's why I asked this question. So I've been under this operating assumption the entire time because I was, you know, there were probably about 6 people from the administration on the other side of the table. And I asked that question, and it was it wasn't, you know, a vague or gray or uncertain answer. It was a very, very straightforward answer. I think there were attorneys in the room. And so, you know, if we're spending this money on this plan, like I'm not, again, I've said before, and I'm going to repeat today, I am not opposed to comprehensive planning. I understand the virtues. But we also should very clearly understand its limitations. And I don't want anyone to be under false impressions about its promise or what it can deliver. So, for example, while we would hope that it would guide development projects, for example, and save us money in them, if we're building, we decide because of our $6 million comprehensive plan, for example, to invest in neighborhood development, we do roads, we do broadband, we do street lighting, we're going to build several thousand houses, we're like, this is a great place, we're going to make sure there's a grocery store. If we can't get one, maybe we'll run our own. That's just one of my hopes. Right, but then we realize, oh, guess what? PWSA is not going to replace those water mains for like the next 50 years, and they don't have enough pressure. There's not enough pressure in the pressure district. Or we do build it, and we build those roads, and then like, okay, we're going to replace those water mains now. We're going to dig it all up. Because guess what? That happens every day, and every single one of us in our districts has knocked on our door, and that resident has said, you didn't touch my street for 50 years. It was a mess. City came in and paved it, and PWSA tore it up the next year. You know, what are you guys doing? Now, I would think that's what a comprehensive plan is for, but in the plans, in the RFP, which again, from A to Z, are in, plus AA, BB, CC, and DD, there isn't really anything about where PWSA's pressure districts have been replaced, right, and restored. Remember all sitting here and being berated by consultants that we spent $500,000 on, which seemed like a lot at the time. It was just a few years ago. That was a lot of money. To say, oh, PWSA's what, we're losing 50% of the water. Well, that's the water in the pressure districts that I'm talking about, the mains, the distribution systems, right? They are discrete, right? I live in a different pressure district than you probably, right? So they're not all different. You could number them or name them. I don't know the numbers and the names. Which ones have been replaced so that they don't have to come back through and replace them. If we're losing 50% of the water on average, we're not losing 50% of the water in every single one of the 8-inch mains or the 12-inch mains or the 60-inch mains, right? So where is our infrastructure? Where have we already spent the $200 million underground? I want to know that. And I would think that that's an integral part of comprehensive planning, right? So that we don't spend that money twice. Or, leave the brand new perfect infrastructure with nothing built on top of it. Because, I don't know, that's the way it was in 1940, and there used to be a steel mill there, and so we've replaced it, but now there's nothing. Right? Et cetera. And I've been, this is a lecture I've given many times before, but I don't see it reflected here. Do you want to speak to that? Anybody? I don't even see the mayor's green print plan, which is not about water systems, but about sewer systems, which tend to be about 30 feet deeper, and about 20% of them are leaking 80% of the water that we've been in consent decree for all these years, right? And we studied them, and PWSA studied them, and it was one of the best things I think PWSA and a mayor's office has done together was to figure out exactly which of those sewer sheds, which again, don't overlap. They're all discrete, separate ones. You could probably flush your toilet all day long and have it raining 100 days, every day of the year and not cause any outfall where you live. But where I live, not even half an inch causes an overflow of rain, right? Yeah. In Bloomfield, 1/10 of an inch of rain causes overflow into the river because it's in the A22 sewer shed. I don't see that here. And we adopted the mayor's green print plan. And it's not in here. So let's talk about infrastructure.
Yeah, first of all, I agree with at least what I'm hearing is your overarching point in terms of the need and I would say primacy of considering infrastructure, existing investments or constraints and need for investment as we think about, where or how development ought to take shape within our communities. What I would say in terms of the exhibits that are listed in the RFP, as Director Abrams referenced, there was no shortage of potential plans to include as exhibits solely for the purposes of giving folks an understanding to respond to the RFP, but not meant to be comprehensive for what they would need to read in advance of doing the work. So those plans that you referenced, as well as dozens of others, will be plans that they need to review and, again, be foundational pieces to the conversation that, and questions that Council Members Charlin and Coghill were asking to ultimately take shape within the plan itself. Because you're absolutely right, for not just the ground level, disruption that not coordinating those investments causes for our residents or each of us as residents. But, as we're thinking about where it makes sense for investments to happen, certain, areas that need to be more dense for a variety of reasons, we have to understand what either infrastructure investments need to happen or ones that have happened that can facilitate that. So I would agree with you.
Okay, so you haven't looked at it yet, but you're going to look at it.
Yeah, I apologize if I get the impression that we only have 30 plus plans for them to look at. We have, as Chief Nzapli said, we have dozens that the consultants will have access to, and again, from authorities, from the county departments that actually have purview over city residents and services that they need, as well as the departments. There are probably hundreds of plans that they'll probably have to comb through over the next couple of months.
Sure, okay. I'm just going to point out that everyone, go ahead and double check me, everybody, but none of the plans have any infrastructure that I see. I love the food waste plan. I love the climate action plan. I love the farmer's market plan. I love the food insecurity plan. I've read them all, right? Voted on some of them. There's public engagement guide. Gender equity report is one that I was like heavily emotionally invested in as well. And my background, again, most people have heard this, is in sociology, right? Didn't finish my dissertation, right? So I love looking at social data. But I've learned the hard way and through many trials and tribulations and budgets and at this table and at other authority tables, right, that we really, really, really have infrastructure issues. And I don't see any infrastructure here. So somebody, feel free to the public or anyone else to double check me on that. And that it just jumped out at me. It doesn't seem to have primacy, and I think it should, especially in a half-populated city where we literally cannot replace it all. We literally can't. We don't have the tax revenue, and we don't have the need for it. So that's when we're planning out for 25 years. That's at the front of my mind, right? So you seem like you want to...
I would just, again, I would agree, and I would just say that the list that was included with the RFP wasn't meant to be comprehensive in nature, but, give folks an understanding and the ability to respond to the RFP, with some sense of work that had been done before. I think through the conversations that we had with all of the respondents, infrastructure certainly came up in the discussions and, will need to be something that is reviewed, not just with the plans that you said, council member, but in the way in which the plan itself takes shape, for the reasons that you touched on, not just from a cost driver standpoint, but where we want to drive, investment and where it's appropriate for us to drive investment.
So I have two separate areas that are related that I want to talk about. One is which is the cost of the plan, which we've touched on a bit before. The second one is the concern over revenue, because these are the things that make me anxious, right? It's we've deliberated and had hot debate over $400,000 of consulting, in the last 3 or 4 months, and this is a $6 million consulting fees. Suggestion or proposal from the administration that I certainly was not expecting this to be anywhere near the ballpark. And so I will just review some of the numbers that people have talked about. We talked about Chicago today. One of the blanks in the chart that my staff left for me. So while Chicago had we were generously rounding up to $4 million, but I think today you corrected it to say that it was $3.6 million or something like that. But I'll just leave it at 4 for easy math. You mentioned Boston quite a bit when you were asked to talk about other plans, but I never heard a dollar. We weren't able to find a dollar amount for Boston. We've been looking for a few weeks. I apologize. Did you say what was the cost for the Boston plan? But HRNA did the contract, you said.
We'll follow up with
and
that.
HRNA is asking us for $3.6 million?
Yes.
Okay. Boston is roughly twice the size of Pittsburgh. So, I'm curious whether it's $7.2 million from HRA for the Boston plan. Again, I keep thinking about, I know everybody looks at me weird, but I keep thinking of these things at a per capita cost. I can't seem to help myself, right? So last month, I said Chicago's was around $4 million, but it has 2.7 million people. And so if you just divide that to so that's 9 times the size of Pittsburgh at 300,000 people. So their 4 million divided by 9 is like 400,000 something. So while I understand your criticism of the Chicago plan, you don't like it, it wasn't good enough, you wanted more outreach. I think you did actually say all those things last month. So yes, I can see spending more than 400,000. But I'm not sure how we get from 400,000 to 6 million. And so again, why do I say that? Because apples to apples, just per capita cost. Chicago, maybe they didn't do enough outreach. Maybe they've already had a comp plan before, and ours needs to be robust. They spent up $1.30 per capita. And the proposal you're putting in front of us today is for Pittsburgh, so that we can do better and have a bigger plan, is $20 per capita. $20 per capita is a big jump from what other cities, it's huge actually, from what other cities are spending. So, well, my chart has in some places that there's, you know, in-house, they did in-house, and I'm sure there were costs. You know, they're kind of all in the ballpark of that dollar per capita. You know, Austin has almost 1 million people, and they spent almost $1 million. They spent a little more than $1 million, 1.3 million. And their population is 964,000, right? So almost 1 million people, almost $1 million in a comp plan. They used Wallace, Roberts, and Todd consultants. I'm sure maybe they had versions of plans before. We have 60 versions of plans, but, and I just can't find, you know, Cincinnati is even less than $1 per capita. It just seems extravagant. Exorbitant, even, is the word I would use. And I've heard the reasons why, and I'm not, you know, we have still kind of like, well, we'll raise more money, we don't know how much, we're going to look at, we're going to find the information. Well, you know, we'll get other authorities and other bodies of governments to they're excited about it. We don't know if they have to follow it. We're going to look into that. We're going to follow up. Yes, we're thinking about infrastructure, but we're going to do that later. We haven't looked at it yet. It's not a strong enough case for $6 million for me yet. I think it, you know, could, for a less exorbitant fee, it could get there. Again, I understand the kind of wisdom and the goals of a comprehensive plan. I've read the state statutes. I've looked at other cities' plans. I have also noticed that on our city planning website, there's a page I love, which is like all of the past Pittsburgh plans, which is great. They weren't linked to the actual plans, but there's a page on the Department of City Planning's website that's like previous city plans. It goes back to like 1890, which is great. There was a comprehensive plan drafted in the 1960s, but City Council didn't adopt it. Don't know what happened there. Maybe City Council didn't like it. I'm not sure why, but it was a fully drafted plan. So I've asked, and it's not easily found online, so I asked our archivists, I gave them that list from the city planning website, and I said, there's like a Robert Moses plan, there's a Olmsted plan, not that I would like the Moses plan, right? If that's the one that wasn't adopted, I'm like, yay, Pittsburgh City Council of the 1960s, thank you, right? But yeah, I mean, what if we never adopt this plan? What if we're all ousted in our next elections, and by the time it comes back, you know, that next city council says, thumbs down. We don't like it. So, so there's that. So I asked our city archivists, because they have done this amazing job of putting basically every city record they've ever found online. And so I have links now to all of those old plans. Even the whole Pittsburgh study that was not internally funded, was funded by, I forget who, Kellogg or something, and from ages past or something. Or maybe it was one of the newspaper magnets, I can't remember. They're all available online, which is really wonderful. And I'll make sure, I just got it earlier this week. Thank you to our city archivists, Nick and Charles, you did amazing. And I will share it to members, including the recent neighborhood plans, you know, the complete streets plan, the bike ped plans. I think they hadn't found the Allegheny River Green Boulevard plan, which was a $2 million plan, which everybody's still kind of hoping gets implemented, which was federally funded. So there's that. And then, so this exorbitant cost, the kind of really, for the cost, not really seeing the return. And then the worry about our cash flow right now. So it's definitely, as Councilman Coghill brought up, it's filing fees. But really, in the last 12 months, the courts out there, hello to our judges, who we respect so much, you know, have deleted the non-resident sports facility usage fee. I had my staff write that down for me, thank you, so that I could say that correctly. It's just gone, right? So that includes everything from a Taylor Swift concert to, you know, out-of-state football team, right? that revenue is gone. The common level ratio has been decreased. Wait, I forgot to recap where they wrote down the notes from, like 80-some%. And last year it was down to 60-some%, and this year it's down to 50-some%. So when your property is at a certain level of tax value, then they just literally just lop off half of it now. And then that's the value that we get to apply our millage to. So that's not great. And then recently, these 2024 appeals that are just starting. So again, every year, from January until March 31st, you can walk into the county and be like, I don't like the assessed value of my property. I think it should be lower. You fill out a pretty easy piece of paper, you give it to them. So those forms are just coming in. The numbers that we know from 2023 resulted in millions of dollars of assessment value being lost and a $1.8 million checks just kind of going out the door. We literally had to give back property tax that had been paid to us. We had a briefing with with the mayor's office and with finance, and we were told that the county wasn't giving us information on who was filing. So kudos to the new chief executive Innamorato and her team at the county. I emailed them and explained this to them and said it would be really, really nice if you let municipalities know on a weekly basis who's appealing their values, because the really kind of easy math is that if the very, very expensive, $50 million buildings walk in the door and be like, I don't like the value of my property, and they get appealed down, then we're going to get another hit in revenue. And so again, they did. So again, shout out to the Innamorato administration. Last Friday, they emailed live data from that week up to last Friday to the Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center for every municipality and every filing in Allegheny County. You can see the value, you can see whether it's a commercial residential property. Most importantly, you can see whether the owner has filed, because those are owners asking for reductions. They're not challenges from other municipalities asking for increases in values. You can see the value of the property. So far, nothing super scary, but we're still in January. Right, so another report will go from the county to the regional data center this Friday, et cetera, until the end of March. And so to Councilman Coghill's point, we can't even guesstimate right now how much of a hit on revenue we're going to take. And again, we've complained over much smaller consulting fees than this one. And just to put it in the ballpark, this all comes out of, this isn't like a capital, this doesn't come out of bond, this comes out of this year's operating budget, right? Is it in toto out of this year's operating budget? How does it spread?
It's spread over 2 years' operating budgets.
Okay,
so there was money in 23. Yeah, there was money in 23, and then there's money in 24. Yeah.
So that's more than this year's Parks and Rec salary budget, which is close. Parks and Rec salary budget this year is $2.9 million. So we could have double the staff at Parks and Rec.
You're looking at me because you're pleading to my heart.
Well, we've talked about this many, many times at the table, that this would solve, when we talk about Stop the Violence, we talk about Parks and Rec. When we talk about reinvesting in our neighborhoods, we talk about Parks and Rec. When we talk about our facilities and our capital planning, we talk about Parks and Rec. When we talk about the swimming pools that we need to have closed, right? Those are capital budget, but still you'll need staff to staff those pools when they reopen, because we are going to reopen them. And we talked about increasing, we worked really hard to increase lifeguard wages in some of the lower level part-time Parks and Rec employees, and it worked. And then people stopped leaving to go to work at the Dormont pool, and they came back to work at city pools. So that was helpful. The entire internal city planning budget that we budgeted this year is $4 million. So it's just, again, I think the first response I had was like, this is sticker shock. I have at the exorbitant consulting fees per capita. And I haven't seen, we keep digging. I'm certainly open to more information. My staff has done a really good job researching, kind of looking and finding who's done comp plans, fairly recently, what's the population of the city, how much did they pay internally or externally. But it's just, you're just out of the ballpark. So I will give you another chance to respond to that. Anyone at the table?
Yeah, I think Assistant Director Watley spoke some to this, in her response to Councilmember Warwick's questions. Councilmember Gross, like, some of the cost here is because we haven't had a comprehensive plan. So there's those initial, immediate costs that need to be done because we haven't had one. I don't know that it's, or believe that it's something that necessarily scales in a linear fashion, like other things. So there is, base level cost. I understand your broader point.
It would be, if we were to graph it, that would be a really big curve.
I understand your broader point, but think a lot of it is grounded in, Assistant Director Watley's response earlier, in that this is our first comprehensive plan. And then I would say, some of it is around the approach that we want to take in being, as inclusive as possible, both related to outreach and then as, in terms of the issues and the topic list that we're talking about, the framing that I used earlier in response to Councilman Coggill's it is broader in that approach, and I think more forward-looking in that approach than a number of the cities that I know the team had looked at, previously. So I appreciate, the concerns that you're raising, but think, that this ultimately will position us in a more favorable position for the city going forward.
With all due respect, it seems narrower and not broader. It seems really to focus more on community conversations and leave out, I think, some really substantive areas, as I mentioned, infrastructure and others, facilities, where we transit. I don't see, so I haven't heard you speak to anything that to me is breadth.
Again, I don't think the exhibits that you're referencing on the previous plans
or the presentations that you've spoken to.
Yeah, are meant to be comprehensive of the areas of focus. Earlier in the RFP, there's the 19 areas of focus, which I'll let Director Abrams and Assistant Director Watley speak to. They know them better than I do in terms of chapter and verse that speak to where the plan will focus and how it will address certain things. And I think to the two that you just mentioned, facilities, infrastructure, certainly nest within a number of those, if not explicitly stated as one of the focus areas. They certainly fit within some of the focus areas that the team has outlined.
Certainly. Feel free, Director.
So what we initially did was kind of categorize, and I can't have the RFP in front of me, but we categorized this in a couple of ways. A welcoming city, I forgot what they were. I'm not sure if they may be in the RFP, but they're overarching, I guess, an overarching vision for what we want to see, and it definitely includes infrastructure. Our plans currently with our neighborhood plans currently include DOMI, which is our infrastructure and some of our transportation related planning activities. We speak with PRT on a regular basis, so we are in touch with them and they know about the plan. So there are pieces of this that are dealing with infrastructure, transportation, because they focus on people, right? And so people's needs include those things. And because it's a people-focused plan, we anticipate that, and we expect that infrastructure will be a key part of this, especially with regard to climate change, because our participation in this region is definitely impacting our infrastructure, and we are very well aware of that. And the climate pieces of this will probably touch on infrastructure as well. So that's just a sample. I mean, I know that there are a lot of things that the plan will cover, as Chief mentioned, that there will be 19 topic areas, and consultants even thought about possibly adding more, because it is our first plan, and because it is so comprehensive. And the integration of those things are really focused on how do we prepare the city itself and our residents for the future.
Okay, so again, the RFP is online, and I have the advantage over you where I actually have it in print in front of me because it's in the text packet. I always like my printed packets. Thank you to the clerk staff. The only water I see is stormwater, which is not actually the same thing as sewer sheds and watersheds. I don't see anything about electrical grids. I don't see anything about gas lines, which is all, 100-year infrastructure, especially around the gas lines. We know that Peoples and the other one have tremendous amounts of lines. Distinctly, I've had them come in separately to both do a small quadrant of the city, like in 10th Ward, Lawrenceville, and I had to literally hold a project to PWSA to make them talk to People's Gas because they were like, no, we're not going to. And in the end, there was only like a 15% overlap on the streets they were opening, which is such a shame because neither of them adjusted their plans. They did hold up so that they opened that 15% of those streets at the same time to do the utility set time. I know we've come a long way. That was, probably 8-9 years ago. We've come a long way, and I know that sometimes we are integrating both water, sewer, and gas lines while a street is open. So to the public, maybe that's why your street was opened like 20 different times on 20 different days and stayed open for a year, like some of them in my district. For those reasons, I would say the coordination was better than opening the street 3 times. And I say that because that's 50% of the cost. So you definitely, as a citizen, don't want to pay for the same street 3 times on 3 separate ones of your bills. But still wasn't super tightly, timing-wise, integrated. But that isn't in here. Climate action does say buildings and transportation infrastructure. Mobility and transportation does say transit and public transportation, which is good. And stormwater just says rainfall and landslide prone. So I hadn't even brought up landslides and floodplains because you had mentioned it already, Director, but it definitely was one of the things I was going to bring up. The Army Corps has a map of soil types and which ones are landslide prone. For tops of the hill and the bottoms of the hill, the bottom of the hill will be clay, the top might be, shale or whatever, and which is it gonna, what kinds of risks for the whole city. We've adjusted since in the last 10 years at council where the flood maps are because of the federal government flood maps, those kinds of things. So I am concerned about that because if it wasn't in the scope, it may not be in the proposals. And we don't have the proposals. So I feel like you can get there. I feel like, of course, there's obviously support to do comprehensive planning. I think you're jumping the gun a little bit, and I think the price is too high. So I think that's all the comments I have now. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I have Councilman Mosley.
Yeah, and I'm going to limit my questions to Bill 54. I have one quick question and then a broader question. I know like some of the, comparison, cities were brought up and the cost of their plan. Is there, any correlation between, cities that have generally, grown a lot over the last half century versus cities that have shrunk? Because I know some of the cities that my esteemed colleague, Councilmember Gross had mentioned, cities like Austin have grown dramatically. So it's like, is there any correlation between the type of investment made in these comprehensive plans of cities that have kind of seen growth over the last half century versus cities like Pittsburgh, which have not grown, which have actually shrunk dramatically over the last half century? Is there any correlation in the kind of investment?
I haven't, it is a great question. I haven't seen like an academic study that would be able to say, that a determinant factor, related to growth in certain cities versus others goes back to, having adopted a comprehensive plan versus not. I do think, citing the cities that you just mentioned, council member, and the way in which, we think about think about development pressures in certain parts of our neighborhoods and others that need investment, it does provide us with the opportunity to then have a conversation around what is the type of growth we want to see, rather than how so often it ends up just being sort of a growth for growth's sake discussion. So,
thank you. And then my other question, is more of a broad philosophical question. I know that you spoke to, the great detail about, I think three things that have come up, particularly, at the table is, the opportunity for grant acquisition, the opportunity for comprehensive zoning reform, as well as the opportunity for, neighborhood visioning, and community development. I think what would be helpful, is a narrative about, really, what this, comprehensive plan could potentially do, to maximize this unique opportunity, that the city is in right now. I've been, saying a lot, as a 47-year-old native, of the city. I feel like, for the first time in my life, the city is somewhat beginning to look forward, pretty much for the entirety of my life. The city has really spent, its time, but bemoaning the loss of the steel industry and kind of looking into the past and trying to kind of hold on, to a lost era. So I think it's extremely important with some of the points that my esteemed colleague, Councilwoman Gross, had brought up about infrastructure and stuff and transportation, which is a huge, passion of mine as well. But speaking to, really maximizing this unique opportunity that the city has to look forward, and really, anybody who knows me, I generally, at some point in a conversation, I pull out, a Star Wars reference, but I feel like, like Luke Skywalker in A New Hope, getting Death Star, like, that threading that needle, like talking about how, this, comprehensive plan, can really thread that needle, to, really, help us, really look forward, and maximize, the next 25 years. I know there's a lot of anxiety about us potentially becoming a city of the third class. If we continue, the hemorrhage population, which we have since the 1960s, what, can stem that tide, and move the city forward. So if you could speak, to some, detail about, how this plan could potentially, really thread that needle and maximize this unique opportunity, to move the city forward and get the city, for the first time, moving back, toward growth for the first time since the 1960s would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll be brief and allow Director Abrams and Assistant Director Watley to speak to that as well. I mean, I think Councilmember, to some degree, my answer or response to your question is kind of within what you said and the question that you laid forth, and that it very much is the opportunity that this presents to us, right, is to have that conversation around the future of the city we want to become, with our residents in a level of depth and intensity, and I would say, in that iterative nature over 2 years in a way that we haven't had it before. We have it in pockets, maybe about one issue, or in pockets, as it relates to an individual community or neighborhood, but never sort of across all of those things and at one time. And that's what this affords us. And if we are going to meet the moment and embrace the promise of what you just said, I really do believe it will take a broad and a comprehensive approach like this in order to be able to do that in a way that isn't just paying lip service to it, but really setting up a structure and a framework by which we then can, meet that moment and deliver on those results. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We're continuing on with first round. Council President.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. It's more of a statement as much as it is a question, but just for clarity, the Oakland plan, which was referenced at one point, costs approximately $500,000. Is that fair to say?
I believe it was more. It was a little bit more than that.
Okay.
It was like, I think maybe $500,000 for the planning, economic and community development pieces of it, and then Domi's piece was about $250,000.
Okay, so much. Okay,
yes.
Much more. And the Hill District plan, which was created and is now also being worked on so it can be formally adopted by the city, I believe is roughly around $500,000-$600,000.
It's coming around to be that much, yes.
Okay. My point is, if we were to continue down that road of planning out these neighborhoods in that manner, we would literally spend 10 to 20 times as much as we would trying to do a comprehensive plan. if you tried to plan out our entire city and our neighborhoods going down that road. Councilman Wilson mentioned Brighton Heights wants to do a plan. He mentioned 150,000 is nowhere near enough, right? So if we invested in these neighborhoods, the Strip, wherever, downtown, which we're working on a plan, right, which we know is going to cost millions, we would spend a whole lot more than $6 million into a comprehensive plan that would then allow us to only spend 100,000 to finish out neighborhood plans. Is that a fair assessment?
That is correct, Council.
Okay. And in terms of what a plan can bring back to a city, if we just use the Hill District as an example, using that plan, I don't know the exact number, so forgive me, but Citizens Bank, after that plan was created, put in, I believe, like 100,000 into sort of the Hill being able to look at its housing stock and what to do with it. The Department of Energy, maybe in 2022, awarded a grant for renewable energy plan to look at all the vacant land in the Hill District. Obviously, we have the Choice Plan that was created. We also had a year ago the RAISE grant, which was the Hill District Master Plan was the basis of going after that grant, which is going to provide infrastructure into the Middle Hill, and that was $11 million that was received. So for a hefty cost of $500,000 to $600,000, we've been able to actualize and realize millions of dollars coming into that neighborhood based upon the plan. So if we take that sort of same idea and extract it out for the entire city, $6 million is a worthwhile investment for hundreds of millions to potentially be realized coming down the line if you just use the Hill District Plan as an example of what that can ultimately leverage. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, it is a fair assessment. And I can give you an example of even anticipation of this plan. We spoke with a national funder who we explained that we were doing a comprehensive plan, and they were excited about it, and they really basically gave us a grant based upon how thorough we were around the topical areas that they were looking at. It's still embargoed. I can't list the funder yet, but it's the anticipation of this from folks in philanthropy nationally and locally will garner millions of dollars of investment into the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to second round. First, I have Councilwoman Cale Smith, followed by Councilwoman Gross, followed by Councilman Coghill. Okay, moving on to Councilwoman Gross. Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. Just a quick response to Councilman Mosley's really excellent question, a question I always ask, especially like when I'm talking about infrastructure, about like, well, what's the difference? It's not apples to apples when you have a dramatically increasing population. Some of these cities that were mentioned, I responded because those were the ones that the team itself compared themselves to, have increased fivefold or more. So, and we've decreased by half. But in, again, the lovely long benchmark cities, which we typically compare ourselves to, which are about 14 cities that we've been comparing ourselves to in Pittsburgh Quarterly and et cetera, for a very long time. And we've been tracking how they do stuff. Baltimore is an obvious example. It's decreased by 50%, just like Pittsburgh. They were only able to find like $150,000 expended for their comprehensive plan, but that must have been not exactly right. So again, I'm hoping to open to anything there because that would be like 10 cents, on the dollar, or 10 cents per capita or something. Cincinnati has decreased in population. My staff are sending me notes here. Cleveland, we believe, is down in population. I think St. Louis, St. Paul. So there are lots of yes. And again, at most I see $2 per capita, but that's Scranton at only 115,000 people, and they spent like $250,000 on their comprehensive plan. So, again, if we were talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, we would have voted yes, immediately. If we were talking about even the philanthropic support, I would be so happy to vote to approve to accept a grant for this planning, but we're not getting any grant money for this planning. And so we have to keep our fingers crossed that there will be receivables, again, after a 2-year planning process. And we won't have neighborhood plans. We're not doing any neighborhood planning while we're waiting for this and having this discussion. And then we would embark on those neighborhood plans that we are told we would have within 5 years. It is not apples to apples to compare the neighborhood cost to a comprehensive plan, because a comprehensive plan is not at the granularity or implementation of a codified neighborhood plan, right? So those codified neighborhood plans actually did already change zoning and things like that. So it is, a comprehensive plan is not, this $6 million will not accomplish 90 neighborhood plans. It's at a bird's eye view. And then we would embark on the cost and endeavor to maybe 7 years out have neighborhood plans in hand. So those will be additional costs to do the neighborhood plans. Does anyone want to respond to that?
I did an analysis for one of our hearings. We're saving approximately $2 million over the course of approximately 10 years doing a comprehensive plan versus doing neighborhood plans for every single neighborhood. And I'm including the cost for downtown, which would probably be about a $2 million plan. So we did do a cost analysis, approximation based upon adopted plans that we've already completed, and knowing the neighborhoods that we're looking at that would probably need plans, understanding how DOMI would possibly have to be involved in some plans. So we did do some analysis around that.
But you don't have a number?
So we're $2 million savings doing a comprehensive plan versus doing a neighborhood plan for every neighborhood. And that's just the cost. The time that it takes to do zoning for every single neighborhood and understanding whatever consequences are unintended or not to those zoning changes would be incredible.
So, okay, so, and then I just wanted to also state that we talked, there was a question earlier about this document, which we were given only in paper in December, I think, which is the department gave to us the comprehensive plan, quick facts about consultant selection and plan deliverables, because there was a question today about who are the subcontractors or the it just says organization here, so I'm not exactly quite sure what we call them. So Common Cause is at 500,000. Sasaki is at 712,500. Grayscale is at 300,000. Brown Mama is at 100,000. One Hood at 210,000. Alyssa Lane at 71,000. But then there is a row for 675,900 that is additional community organizations, additional facilitators, additional engagement support that are to be determined. And I think, because I think the question was, are you going to be using neighborhood organizations? And I feel like the answer was a little fuzzy. It was kind of like, well, we're using Common Cause. So that's a chunk. That's about a quarter of the Common Cause contract that would be going out to neighborhood organizations, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yes. That $600,000 or so that you mentioned will go to a variety of neighborhood groups, including neighborhood organizations.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, a variety of nonprofit organizations in addition to neighborhood organizations.
Okay. The HR&A advisors also have some subcontractors proposed at Urban American City, Bureau Happold, never heard of them. Sasaki also, Cityfy, Merritt Chase, and also a cultural heritage organization to be identified. Okay. I think some of those have some engineering capacity, so that's good when we're talking about infrastructure. All right. I think that's all I've got for second round. I appreciate it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, to follow up, I was thinking the same thing Councilwoman Gross just asked as to the neighborhood plans, individual neighborhood plans versus the comp plan. And to Mr. Lavelle's comments that it would cost a heck of a lot more had we not have the comp plan when we go do the individual neighborhood plans, correct?
Yes, I mean, I think there's an immediate to the $1 million savings, but the long-term cost of doing individual plans is probably cumulative as well.
So I hear that, right? But at the same time, just a little bit ago, we were talking about we're going to do 90 individual neighborhood plans, right? So explain to me how that saves money.
So the comp plan, from a land use standpoint and probably other aspects of it, will serve as a baseline for all future planning activity that happens in communities. So right now, we spend approximately $250,000 per plan without DOMI. When we add DOMI, it's another $250,000. So $500,000 on some neighborhood plans. We were able to do these visioning plans with places like East Liberty and Lincoln Leamington for $50,000 a piece. They didn't have a lot of land use components to them, but we figured on average around $100,000 per plan with the baseline of the comprehensive plan, because it will have a land use map to it. We're going to work on the zoning code overhaul as well. So those components that are often done as a part of the planning process will have occurred. Part of what Assistant Director Watley brilliantly thought about, and which will be incorporated into the engagement process, is really kind of going to 90 each neighborhood. So going to 90 neighborhoods to understand like their vision, what their wishes are, because we don't have that. We have that for 6 neighborhoods. And
So that's part of the comp plan?
Yes. So 90 neighborhood outreach. So that can be incorporated again into when we go back to individual plans. So a lot of the groundwork for these individual plans will be done through the comprehensive planning process, which will lower the cost per plan going forward.
That's how you come up with the $2 million savings.
Yes.
It's impossible to project that.
Absolutely it is.
Each neighborhood is so different.
Yes.
You know, my neighborhoods are so much different than everyone else's hairs, and vice versa.
Yeah,
so I don't know how you come up with that figure.
Well, we imagine that Beachview, for example,
Yeah.
we'd have to have DOMI in the process because of the T. And so that would be an outliner. There were about probably maybe 10 or 11 outlier neighborhoods that are probably going to cost a lot more. But of course, we won't have an actual number because we don't know. But on average, we're anticipating 100,000. Some will be less money because small neighborhoods will require less.
So you're
and
figuring
some
around
will
$1
be
million
more.
for the individual neighborhood plans across the city?
$100,000 per neighborhood.
Per neighborhood,
on
so-
average, but like
Oh,
places
so you're
like downtown, it'll be $2 million. I think I outlined it in the document that I sent. I mean, again, we're just really trying to estimate based upon what we know we've paid for plans,
Right.
and what we anticipate paying for them with the work that'll be done within the comprehensive plan. That'll be basically base
So your
setting.
theory of saving $2 million is that there's a lot of information that we're going to gather from the comprehensive plan that these individual neighborhoods can lean on, right?
Yes.
And it's going to save what? Time and energy
It'll
as to
save-
doing that?
and
Is that
time
what it
as
is?
well. Exactly.
Yeah. But the $2 million, we have no idea. Yeah, I mean, you can't throw out $2 million.
I'm hoping that it's
over
I'm-
90 neighborhoods.
I was hoping I was being conservative when I
Right.
wrote that number down, but that's probably on average.
So what do we estimate at $100,000 a piece with 90 neighborhoods? What's that amount? If we did
Sounds
an
more like a
individual
political
plan for each
campaign.
neighborhood. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, right now, I mean, we're looking at, I'm not sure,
Okay, that's
at a minimum, $250,000 per neighborhood. Without DOMI being involved, which adds another
So
$250,000.
what's 100,000 times 90?
Nine-
$9 million. Okay, so on top of the $6 million, part of the master plan here is to have individual neighborhood plans, which is what I'm really interested in, I will tell you, okay? But we're talking about another $9 million if the costs equal out. Could have been $11 million, but we're estimating $2 million savings there.
But but it's even more when we don't do a comprehensive plan. It's
To
more
do
money
individual neighborhood plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're saying by $2 million.
Yes, but I think there's
that's
also
a guesstimation, I get it.
Yeah, the cost up front we can tell. I mean, it can guesstimate. But then there's a back end cost
Right.
of when we don't do a comprehensive plan that it'll cost us more money, more time to do the zoning code overhaul, for example, or putting in policies in place. Those are very individual by individual basis that we have to actually put those items in, and we can do it at scale from a comprehensive planning level.
Okay, so the idea is when we're done with the master comprehensive plan, we move on to individual neighborhood plans, correct? Because we'll have that information to draw on, right? So it's costing us $6 million now. And when we start doing those individual neighborhood plans, we're talking $10 million.
Yes.
Right. So you're going to come back to us in 2 years and say we need $10 million for the individual
Oh, no.
neighborhood plans?
No. Part of the process will be to understand the order in which and the scheduling around and the budgeting around what plans need to be done when. And we don't have
So
that
that could be
at all.
spread out. If we don't have the money, we may not have the money. I don't think we're going to have the money in 2 years to do individual plans at this point. Not the way we're spending. But regardless, we're guesstimating about 900 or nine. Wait, what was that number? $99 million to do individual neighborhood plans. That's just a guesstimation. And really would have been 11, but with your guesstimation of savings of 2, okay. So, okay, I'll get past that. But anyway, I see bigger expenses coming down more so than what we're paying for this original comprehensive plan to do individual neighborhood plans. It's going to be more costly. $9 million
I don't know how to
versus $6
explain it. I
million.
don't-
So maybe I can add a little bit of clarity. So one of the topic areas is neighborhood planning. We have tasked the consultant team to look at how we are doing neighborhood plans. And so the way that we're doing them right now, we're doing them neighborhood by neighborhood or clusters of neighborhoods. And so it is entirely possible that we can come out of the comprehensive plan process with a strategy on how best to prioritize which neighborhoods get a plan first, and also what geography. So it could be that maybe it's 3 neighborhoods in one planning process. Or so I do want to make sure that we aren't overly extrapolating potential costs that there's some anxiety coming back around. So there is a thought to make sure that this is very, very streamlined. So we are not asking for millions of dollars now and then coming back to the table in 2 years for additional funding. And so we've asked, again, the consultant teams to help us figure that out.
Yeah. Okay, so I was reading in the text file, town hall meetings are a thing of the past. Who's that from? Is that from HRA?
That is a general feeling from the planning community around the country, and maybe even.
Is that right?
Oh yes.
Is that right?
Town hall meetings.
To be replaced by what?
Well, individual organizations and people who gather have their own events. So the idea is to not only, because if you call people to a meeting, you're assuming that everybody's available and has childcare and is not working at that time. And a lot of town hall meetings happen at 7 o'clock at night, and because of people's work schedules and multiple jobs that people hold and responsibilities they have, they cannot meet a town meeting. So the idea is to go to where people are, as opposed to making them come to us. And that is an idea that has sprung out in the past probably 10 years around community engagement. So
I love town hall meetings. I have such success
they're great.
at them. I get people energized. They come, good ideas, good positive energy comes from them. And if you're telling me we're not going to have
No. We're saying that,
it's
it's not it is not something that is conducive to a planning process where you want to reach a number of people. Town hall meetings are great and they are effective, but they're not the only tool in the toolbook around engagement.
Understood. But we're saying we're not doing it.
I would imagine
It's a thing of the past.
I would imagine that if you call the town hall around the comp plan,
well, that's what I'm
then
asking
people
you.
would show
Right.
up. Absolutely.
That's what I'm asking you. The text
But I
says
don't-
it's a thing of the past. I'm like,
right.
well, how do I?
But planning departments
I mean,
don't
it's-
call town halls around a planning process because no one would show up. I mean, I hate to say it, but no one would show up to a planning.
It's all about who promotes it.
Exactly.
Let me tell you.
Well, no, it's
and if
I
we're
think-
paying promotional groups,
but they're
one
not,
hood, so
right.
so they are responsible for getting those people there in
Right.
the way of flyers,
Well,
in the way of
they're-
phone calls.
I would say, I'm sorry, Director. I would say too, Councilman, in addition to the director, it's not town hall meetings alone, right?
Well, that's what I want to hear, Kyle.
Yeah,
that's what I want to hear.
But what I would say
I
too
read is no town halls.
Sure, some of it too also relates to the structure of the meeting, right? Like a town hall meeting, especially for something where we want to have conversations around, a variety of topic areas. So I think about the way that we structured the budget meetings, right? Like, I wouldn't characterize those as traditional town hall meetings where each person gets 3 minutes, and we respond, but, we had a presentation and then, we engaged folks in table talks around specific issues, right? As it relates both to the operating budget and to the capital budget. So that, I wouldn't have characterized that as a town hall, but it certainly is a community meeting, that sort of blends those approaches. So
Okay.
I don't want to get caught up in sort of the nomenclature.
Understood. Town halls are not off the table, correct?
Absolutely
Okay,
not.
who put this together?
What is
This is the,
That's the first memo.
it's a memorandum. Is that from us? Is that from?
I can't see the front of it, I'm sorry.
It says Pittsburgh Department of City Planning, so that must be from you.
Yes,
Okay.
that's us.
Okay, well, that verbiage is from you, so I don't know, why town halls are a thing of the past. I don't like seeing that. I just don't, I thrive on those. I really do.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to get caught up.
I think it's from the town halls were the way that a lot of planning activity occurred. And if you missed the meeting, you missed an opportunity to get your input in. That is what that refers to.
Understood.
So it's not suggesting
Understood.
It's not suggesting at all.
Understood. I just didn't feel that even belonged
town halls
in
is
here,
the
but
only way
whatever,
to do
yeah.
things.
Yeah, there's
It should have been
1,000 different ways. I'm hoping
absolutely.
we're reaching out to people
There are
any
tons
which way
of
we
ways.
can. So, okay, so I don't want to belabor that fact, but of the 2.6 million, how much is going toward consultants and personal paychecks for people we're hiring in the engagement plan?
We don't track what is going to people's personal, what they're taking out personally, but
how much are we setting aside for putting people on a payroll and giving them a check?
Well,
and consulting firms, whether it be, one of
the entire amount will be the Common Cause, and their teams will decide how that money is dispersed. And we will work with them, obviously, to figure. They're going to do an engagement plan, and so there will be dollar amounts associated with that because they have to be invoiced. So these are the ways that we are going to be able to track what happens throughout the entire engagement process, and also technical services processes as well.
Okay, so judging by your percentage points, I've broken it down, and national firms of that 2.65 million, I think, or 2.645 million, are getting $1,031,550. You're aware of this? You aware that this is broken down already into?
Keep going. Yeah.
Okay. How about the local firms? What are they going to get?
I believe that they put a proposal in with the response to the RFP, and I believe Councilwoman Gross may have listed the amounts, but it's in the RFP response. It's in the it should be in that document. But we can get that information to you.
It is. I just wanted to see if you knew it.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay, 846,000 for
Okay.
local firms.
Right.
National firms, 1,031,000. And the community members and the community events all lumped together out of that 2.645 million is, do you have any idea what that is?
900.
A little less than a million.
Close, 767. So I just wanted to make sure that breakdown.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't go on. I could question 1,000 things. Again, it comes back to timing, the uncertainty of our financial outlook over until April, I will say. Okay, before I can confidently support something like this. Again, I do have a problem with the price tag on it. I could probably get over that if I didn't know we were going to be broke next year. Okay, so thanks.
Thanks, Councilman Mosley.
Oh, I just wanted to state for the record, I'll be recusing myself from Bill 55 to avoid any perception of a conflict of interest, real or perceived.
Thank you. Having exhausted second, Councilman Charlin.
Sorry. I just very quickly here wanted to. I don't want to belabor this, but Council President Lavelle brought up the cost of the Oakland plan and the Hill District plan, which are arguably probably neighborhood 2 and 3 in our most challenging neighborhoods. Would have the most complicated plan there, but those also aren't 2 neighborhoods. They're 7 neighborhoods. So I think we're doing some bad math here when we're saying that 2 plans cost $1 million. Those are 7 neighborhood plans. In fact, actually, was the Bluff part of the Hill District plan or anything in Uptown? No. Okay.
That was a separate.
That was the Eco Innovation District plan.
Sure. So either way, we're still talking 7 neighborhoods that were all represented there at $1 million for that plan. I'm not sure that our cost saving analysis here on what this is going to cost for neighborhood plans is accurate. We are going to, we're certainly going to be able to do certain neighborhoods that pair well together and save the cost there. So, I'm not sure I buy that math. And I want to put that out there. The other thing that I want to say is that one of the issues that we've had that we continue to have with the Oakland plan is that we hear continually that oh, these plans are a framework and they are meant to be fluid and meant to be something that we can work on. But with the Oakland plan, it is very challenging to get the Department of City Planning to continue to work on the Oakland plan, which is supposed to be this living document. And what I hear from the Department of City Planning is that we are exhausted with Oakland. We're tired of dealing with it, and this is how we went along with it. So we're making the same statement here that this comprehensive plan is going to be a living document, except for when we're tired of working on it. If you'd like to respond.
I don't. You respond because this is your. These are. I don't. I know that our planner, Christian Umbach has been working tirelessly with some of the groups, and the main group has actually been the table that's been set around the plan. So Christian has probably 6 neighborhoods. I mean, we don't have a planner for each neighborhood.
Yeah.
We have planners who have a lot of neighborhoods, and Thomas has probably the most of any planner at this point, or used to have it. So, I mean, it's not that we're tired. No one's tired of any neighborhood. Our planners love working in our.
So,
do you have a? I mean, we can talk offline
I'm
about.
not going to throw someone under the bus.
No, I mean we
camera,
just talk online about that, but I don't think because we have our zoning division is working on Oakland zoning, and Christian, with the help of a lot of our planners who are not in the neighborhoods that Christian works in, are working with Christian on the neighborhoods. We have, I believe, other departments are working with. So there is a lot of happening around the Oakland plan, and it includes having to put together an implementation plan, which takes a lot of work. So I'm not sure if it was something that was misrepresented by somebody.
Yeah.
You may have heard something from somebody.
No, it was a direct comment, and the phrase was Oakland fatigue, which
So there's a thing called planning fatigue
Yeah.
that occurs. I mean, it's not, and it's not
Yeah.
like a negative. It's something that occurs. It's not like somebody's just like, I don't want to do it with Oakland anymore. It's a fatigue around a lot of the planning activities in our neighborhoods. A lot of them have planning fatigue. And it's a real issue that we actually struggle with as far as the comp plan, because a lot of these neighborhoods that we've already, like Oakland, we've got to go back to Oakland on the comp plan. We might not go back to Oakland like we would go to a neighborhood that hasn't had a plan. We just did a plan for Oakland, but planning fatigue is a very real thing. So I'm not trying to suggest that it is something that they just don't want to deal with Oakland, but having been, in Oakland for 2 years from a planning process, and a lot of attention has been paid to Oakland at the expense of other neighborhoods to some extent as well, which hopefully the comp plan will help solve, right? Because these are large neighborhoods. Downtown is another one, but there's a lot of compromise and collaboration, and often fatigue when it comes to the amount of work that has to be put into certain parts of the city. Downtown, as you mentioned, is one. The Greater Hill District neighborhoods are another one, and they can put a lot of pressure on a planner when there's only one planner, which is why we spent a lot of time last year with our budget getting more planners, because there was definitely fatigue. We only had 4 planners working on 2 master plans for a total of 7 neighborhoods. Oakland and Hill District. So that does occur, and we hope that this plan will save our planners some time and give them some space so they can do the work throughout the entire city. I want to make sure that Director Wiley wants to say something.
You actually said that very, very well. We welcome all of the comments and questions that we have had today. It's been very enlightening to know how you all are processing this information. If you don't have any other questions.
You ending the meeting?
So I will, Councilman, are you finished or?
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't really think I was done there, but I think we're done. So I guess that's fine.
We can definitely talk about this. It's important to hear this, Councilman. So I would love to talk to you about Oakland and other neighborhoods as well.
Councilwoman Kell Smith for second round.
For protocol.
Third round. Third round.
Just for protocol, I want to say it's never okay to ask a council member if they're done asking questions. When they're done, they'll stop talking. And I just want to make that very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask that this?
Councilwoman Gross, third round.
Yeah, very briefly. I was going to maybe say it's even point of order. Can we ask that this report be attached to the legislative record for today, so it is not attached? It's been distributed to members. Madam Clerk, are you able to attach this to the record? Thank you. That's all that is. And then I'd like roll call vote, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
We were planning on a roll call vote. Chair's prerogative. I'm going to ask a couple questions, and I'm going to call to question. So first of all, I want to thank you for the detailed memo that you provided council members. And if that is what Councilwoman Gross was holding up, was the memo?
No, it was distributed in December. At the table, we don't have an electronic copy.
Okay, so separate from the memo and answering
Correct.
questions.
I believe so.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification. Anyway, the memo was very helpful, and when I received questions, even just as late as yesterday from the public, how do you have faith that the engagement is fleshed out and that you know what's in it, and how have you done your due diligence? The step-by-step bulleted points of what the engagement will look like was incredibly helpful for answering those questions. So thank you. One question that did come up that I know is, I think I know the answer to, I wanted to ask for the record was the feedback loop and engagement. When someone says something in a meeting, whether it's a small group, large group, town hall, not a town hall, online, whatever it is, what will be the feedback loop to inform that exact person? So that person understands, this is how we heard your question or your concern, this is how we addressed it, this is how we are integrating it into our plan. How would that look like? What is the thinking around that? I guess the framework.
This is a great question, and Memphis actually helped us figure this out, because oftentimes the first engagement, they don't get to hear the feedback or how their feedback has been incorporated into an engagement process. So the idea is to always go back to that first few, to understand, so they understand how their engagement has been received, and also for them to see other engagement that's happened throughout the city since they were the first set. That's one way to do it. As far as individual meetings, I can't comment. Common Cause and their consultants will probably figure out how to do that with individual meetings, but from an entire process around engagement for the entire city for 2 years or for a year and a half, we will go back to the first engaged communities and residents.
So there will be a feedback loop
That's
built in.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I think there's more from Sasaki. Okay. Yeah, Sasaki's built it in as well from technical services. So we feed that feedback loops feed into another feedback loop so that people understand the data collected as well as the engagement comments.
Understood. Thank you. And then, I'll just state, I also have concerns about our city's financial future, deep concerns, and I guess with that, I want to seek to realize savings, $6 million worth of savings elsewhere in our budget. I really do want to work with council members. I want to work with the administration. I want to find, whether it's partially in this year's budget, next year's budget, something that we can bring back to the public saying we've realized $6 million worth of savings elsewhere to help. That's how much you'll see me penny pinching throughout the year. I'm going to be doing some extreme penny pinching in my role here and as a member of council, and asking some tough questions. But I think so highly of this plan, and I care so much about it that I am willing to do the work as much as necessary to realize those savings elsewhere. And again, it might not be 100% in this year's budget because we already passed a budget, but if we can, great. If not, extend it into next year. And I also just want to state what's been stated before, which is in a time of necessary austerity, I can't think of a better time to have a plan that will inform our budget priorities. When we need to make tough decisions about what the budget looks like and where we're going to get the biggest bang for the buck, we need a plan to help us inform the budget. And that is really important to, for this time in Pittsburgh. So I do look forward to regular council briefings or post agendas or whatever we can do to make it public and transparent as well. So you're informing us, as Councilwoman Wormick mentioned, you're informing us and the public as to the progress every 3 months or every quarter, et cetera, et cetera. With that, I am going to call to question, and let's have a roll call vote, please.
Both at the same
For
time,
both,
or you want to take individual?
Let's take them individually.
Bill number 54, Mr. Charlin.
Yes, aye.
Mr. Coghill.
No. Which one is it? You can say
Ms.
that.
Gross.
no.
Mr. Laval.
Aye.
Mr. Mosley.
Aye.
Mrs. Kell Smith.
Abstain.
So,
Ms. Warwick.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
Ms. Strasburger, Chair.
Aye.
6 ayes, 2 noes, and 1 abstention. On Bill 54. On Bill 55, Mr. Charlin,
Aye.
Mr. Coghill,
No.
Ms. Gross,
No.
Mr. Lavelle,
Aye.
Mr. Mosley,
Abstain.
Mrs. Kell Smith,
No.
Ms. Warwick,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
Ms. Strasburger.
Aye.
Ayes 5, noes 3, 1 abstention.
Thank you. I really appreciate the robust set of questions and conversation. This is a monumental set of bills. So thank you for joining us for so long today. And with that, I will actually move us out of order just a little bit and move us on to Innovation, Performance, Asset Management, and Technology Committee, which perhaps we should have done earlier on, but thank you for those who are joining us today for being here, and Bill 46.
Bill 46, Resolution Amending Resolution 681 of 2022, authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to enter into an amended agreement with B3 Solutions, Inc. for the continued provision of software maintenance and support services for critical applications and transition guidance by increasing the approved amount by $200,000 and extending the contract for 1 year until December 31st, 2024. The amended total cost not to exceed of the contract will now be $2,129,321 over a period not to exceed 7 years.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, or discussion on this one?
Well, I'm just going to say, I think $2 million for an extension is an awful lot of money. That's all I'm going to say.
It's 200.
Oh, I thought you said $2 million.
200.
Okay, then I'm okay. Thanks.
200,000.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One opposed. Affirmative recommendation. And that moves us on for now to Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs Committee chaired by Councilman Mosley.
Bill 47, Resolution Adopting Plan Revision to the City of Pittsburgh's Official Sewage Facilities Plan for 107 and 109 Natchez Street, 15211 at no cost to the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That brings us back to Bill 59 under our Land Use and Economic Development Committee.
Bill 59, Ordinance Amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title 9, Zoning Code, Article 5, Use Regulations, Chapter 911, Primary Uses at Section 911.02, Use Table in Chapter 911.04.A.69, Use Standards to permit single-unit attached residential uses in residential single-unit detached districts, subject to certain standards.
Motion to send to Planning Commission for report and recommendation. I'd like to make a comment as well.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to thank all the sponsors of the bill. Really appreciate everyone joining in on this and being supportive of a step that I believe is one of many that we can make. Thank you.
Any further discussion, Councilwoman Kell Smith?
I just want to thank the members too, and Councilman Wilson for his leadership in this area. It's been something that he's been working a lot on, all the development stuff, all the zoning stuff. I cannot support this today, and I am waiting for some more discussion and the recommendation to come back. Just because my district has a lot of concerns, as he knows, in terms of zoning and a lot of questions that they worry about. So I'm going to wait and make sure that the impact to my district is something that our residents are supportive of after I talk with them. But if not, then I'll vote no. But at the same time, I understand and appreciate the thought behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Warbeck.
Yeah, just as a general, and I'm supportive of this bill and understand, why we got to it. But I do, just as far as the public hearing, I guess I would encourage members to go, because I do think one thing I would caution as we embark on all of this zoning reform, right, which everybody wants to do, and just because I actually had a conversation with someone who was on a committee that that felt that in a completely different neighborhood, didn't know but just felt that the neighbors who were concerned weren't, that their case was being misrepresented, right? This was just a one-on-one. So the reason I say that we should go to the public hearing is that while we do need zoning reform, I'm not a big fan of and this isn't council necessarily, right? But this notion that the people living in communities are the barrier to us, making our city better, right? Like all the old folks who live here are the barrier to make. I don't think that's fair, and I would like the engagement and conversation around the zoning to be a little kinder, be a little more understanding, and so and I'm glad. Obviously, that's why we have these public hearings. But that's just my comment, kind of too. So all the folks at large who are so interested in zoning, including myself, including lots of us, that these conversations will go better if we are a little more empathetic with each other.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is to send to Planning Commission for report and recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Affirmative recommendation to planning. That concludes our agenda. Meeting announcements. Next week, council will hold its regular meeting on Tuesday, February 6th at 10 a.m. and the standing meeting on Wednesday, February 7th at 10 a.m. To register to speak, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage or call the clerk's office at 412-255-2138. The speaker registration will close at 9 a.m. on the day of the meetings. Do we have any comments from council? Yes, Councilwoman Warwick.
Yeah, I'd like to call for a post agenda on DOMI's Complete Streets Action Group State of Mobility Report.
Sporting goods.
Second.
Do we have a second? Okay, all those in, do we need to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Kell-Smith. So we will schedule a post agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Until the end of the meeting, right? The Dick's Sporting Goods bill, are we
We
done?
held that.
Held for, okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? All right, can we have a motion to excuse the absent, can we have a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.